want you guys to know that although I'm going to ask you guys a lot of questions, I kind of want this to be just like a fun conversation, okay? So if we're talking about the CCs and Uncle Ron remembers something about, hey, this one time when so-and-so accidentally set his hand on fire, you guys just go on and just talk about it. Just laugh and talk amongst yourselves, and if the conversation slows down for a second.
Do you want me to tell everything about your grandma that I know?
Everything.
Well, this could take about 10 hours.
Everything.
You want me to read off my notes?
Absolutely, if you need to.
If that's he's got notes on
He's
the
already.
CCs though. Do you
That's
want
fine.
to start before that?
No, yeah, well, what I'm going to do is, and I hope you guys can remember this, what I'll do is I'll first ask you, and I'll just start with Aunt Clarice, what's your name, when were you born, and where were you born? And then we'll just go right along, okay? So why don't you go ahead and start.
Clarice May Verbeten,
Okay,
August 22nd, 24,
okay, wonderful,
and at St. Mary's Hospital in Racine, the old St. Mary's Hospital.
wonderful. And Grandpa,
I was born in Tomahawk,
what year?
1920. I was born in Tomahawk.
Wonderful. Uncle Ron,
My name is Ron Gall, and I was born in Amory, Wisconsin, January 9th, 1923.
1923. Now, I'm actually not familiar with Amory. Is that in northern Wisconsin, and is that in middle Wisconsin? Where would you describe Amory? Where would you?
Amory is the western part of the state.
Okay, wonderful. That's in what?
It's, you know where, well, Highway 8 runs east and west, and it runs into Minnesota at,
St. Paul?
the St. Croix Falls is where the 8 runs into. We live south of there, about 20 miles.
Okay, that's
That's where my father and mother started a farm after they left. They got married in Rylander, and they left there and went farming because my dad was given 3 or 4 cows by his father to start farming with.
wonderful.
And
See, I'm curious about Western because eventually, you guys are from 3 different parts of the state of Wisconsin, basically. Eventually, all your stories are going to come together as we kind of go through this, so I'll be excited. Now, I had mentioned I just wanted to talk about the CCs and life about that, but then I started thinking I should expand this. Now, you were all born during the 1920s. My earliest memory is when I was 3 years old, so I would never expect you guys to remember anything before that, okay?
Oh, yes.
But I am, oh, you do?
I do.
I am curious, do you guys remember anything about your life during the 1920s? Could you describe any of that? Was it hard? Was it easy growing up? Because, you know, the 1920s were kind of considered like our boom times. They were supposed to be good times for everybody. And then we'll transition into the 30s after that. But I'm curious, do you guys have any stories or thoughts in the 20s?
To begin with, my dad and mom were buried in Kimberly, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And Dad came from Wrightstown, and Mother came from Appleton originally, but moved in into Kimberly.
Okay.
And when they were married, well, one thing, my mother got beat up when she was carrying my brother Joe. They lived on a farm, my dad did. My dad didn't like farming though, but he lived on a farm. And this tramp came to the door, and like we all did years ago, when a tramp came to the door, you give them food. Well, this tramp followed my mother in the house, and Mother got scared, and she yelled for my dad, but my dad was out in the field, but she thought she'd scare the guy away. But instead, he beat her up, and Joe was born, my brother Joe was born right after that, and he was black and blue from the beating up that she got. Now, you wouldn't know the May family from here, but the May family that lived in Racine here, and I even worked for them, her father is the one that took all the things down, what had happened to my mother while she was beat up in there.
Okay. So a man came to the door and
Beat her up, a tramp,
okay.
a tramp. Because she was going to fix some food for him, but he followed her in the house.
You got scared, I think, when she hollered for your dad. And
Yeah, when Dad come home, he saw him on the floor,
Wow.
beat up.
And that was your brother Joe?
That was my oldest
And
brother.
so he's older than you are.
Oh, yeah, I'm the
Okay.
youngest girl.
So
Living.
what year was he born?
Joe was born in 1911.
Okay, so that was in 1911.
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. You said you remember the 1920s. Do you have any thoughts on the 1920s when you were
Oh.
growing up?
Oh, yeah. For one thing, my dad
Mm-hmm.
owned the Badger Roofing Company in town here.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 9 trucks.
He had
at
9
that-
trucks, yeah.
9 trucks at that time. So he had a big business. As a matter of fact, they got pictures. I don't know if Margaret had that picture, or I don't think Ruth has it. I think my sister Margaret.
I don't know who got that picture
I
of the
think
9
it's
trucks
Margaret
and
that
all
has
that.
that, the picture of all the flighting chairs that they had.
I've never
Or
seen
trucks,
that.
rather.
We've got
Well,
pictures.
somebody's
Then the
got that
Depression
picture.
hit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mom and Dad had just started to add on to the house because the house was getting too small.
Mhm.
Just getting too many of us. So they added on to it, and they were just in the middle of that when the Depression started. Mother had enough money in cash to pay for a house full of furniture. Of course, furniture wasn't like it is now, but even at that time it was big. My dad and my Uncle Pete at that time, they had lost $35,000 in the business.
Wow.
You can see how big of a business it was.
Sure.
But they still had the business. And my dad, for the guys that were regular workers, my dad and Uncle Pete paid them wages for a year, even if they didn't work. That's where part of the money went
Sure.
to. Because they said if our family was eating, those families had to eat too. But after a year, the money got. So then they mortgaged their house. And then they got what Roosevelt did at that time when the Depression was.
Mm-hmm.
They started FHA loans.
Sure.
I don't know if you've heard of
Federal
those.
Housing Administration.
Yeah, so they got a cheaper interest because it was a federal
Mm-hmm.
housing thing. So they mortgaged the house, which they didn't have to do because the house was paid for anyhow.
Right.
But at that time, they had to.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That's great. Okay. We're going to talk about Roosevelt in about 2 minutes. Now, I was going to ask you guys a couple of questions. Aunt Clarice has already mentioned the Great Depression. Okay.
Right.
We all know that times have changed a lot since then. Can you remember any specific prices of what goods might have cost? Let's say eggs or milk or
Oh,
clothes.
shoot, where the hell is that book?
Yeah.
We got a book.
I have 2.
Yeah, but you know from experience what that stuff costs.
Oh, yeah.
So right now I can probably go to Woodman's or Piggly Wiggly
Oh,
and I can get a
the-
dozen eggs for
when I was-
99 cents or
Well, back in the
Sure.
early 30s, you could buy gas for 7 gallons for $1.
wow.
7 gallons for $1. And they pumped it they put it in your tank. They didn't, they washed your windows,
Check
checked your oil, checked the radiator.
Full service.
Sometimes they
Clean
even
your
checked the
windshield.
battery.
Now, when you guys were growing up, and Grandpa, what did your parents do for a living to earn money for the family?
From the time I was born,
Well, if you can vaguely remember.
my dad worked in the paper mill in Tomahawk.
Okay.
And then he wasn't satisfied with that, so he moved out. And he moved to Iowa. His winters were so bad in Iowa that he came back to Wisconsin by Madison. Because I had an Uncle Bob that lived in Madison. And that's where we started school. And we went to the country schools for a few years. And then he wanted to move into the city because he got stuck in the snow.
He didn't like that?
And his boys had to take shovels and help him, and he never got to town. He always had to turn around and come back. Anyway, we moved into Madison, and I went to Lowell School. And after I graduated from Lowell School, I went to East Side High.
Hmm.
And about the time that you're ready to graduate, then my dad took off. We went up north again, lived up north for so so many years. And I worked in the hay fields and helped milk cows on another farm and so on, but it's,
That's when you milked it by hand though.
yeah, and you had to work for $1 a day.
Wow, $1.
You want me to keep right on going?
No, I got all your stories. There's plenty of questions here. Uncle Ron, what did your parents do while you were growing up? I know you kind of mentioned that
They were
earlier.
farmers.
Mm-hmm.
They, well, like I say, they started out farming at Amory, and that was a little log house that I was born in, because the upstairs, they woke up in the morning, there was about 6 inches of snow alongside the bed.
Wow.
That's the kind of house they had for a while.
Wow.
And
How'd they keep that warm?
then,
How'd you keep it warm?
You didn't.
bundled up in blankets and what have you. And Dad fired a wood burner. And then we moved from there, then we moved to Almena. And that's in farther from the state line. And then I started school, Catholic school in Almena. And I went 2.5 years to Catholic school. Then we moved again, we moved to Barron on a bigger farm. Then I walked to graded school.
How far did you walk?
Up in your 3 miles.
Wow.
Had 3/4 of a mile off of the main highway, on a side road that never got plowed until Lord knows when.
So you don't ever remember having off of school because weather was too bad or anything like that?
Well, I had off of school, you just didn't go to school, that was it.
Okay, I actually want to keep talking about schools here for a second. Do you guys remember any of the subjects that you studied while you were in school? Aunt Clarice, can you remember any of the certain subjects or things you talked about in school?
Oh man, we had everyone I guess that you got now, except some of these here computer stuff
Sure.
and that. Because I went to the Catholic school
Mm-hmm.
at St. Joe's in D.C.
Right.
And of course we had our reading, writing, and arithmetic, and spelling, and history, and geography. Well, in the higher grades we had, let me see, I can't even think. Oh, well anyhow, we had a lot of other ones singing. As a group we'd sing, you know, that from 5th to 8th grade we had certain things we did together.
Sure.
We never had gym outside of you. We had a big gym. We had the only gym in town that they could officially play basketball in for the Catholic schools, the one that we had at that time, because we had a new school. But anyhow,
Was that
That's-
St. Joe's school?
that was St. Joe's, yeah, that gym that they've got there. If you've ever been in that gym,
Yes.
that's the biggest one that they had in town. At St. Joe's, at that time, you know, Catholic school I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The public schools had their gyms,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
of course. But like we had, when I started school, we had one sister, the 1st grade, and then she had half of the 2nd grade. And the next grade had half of the 2nd grade and the 3rd grade,
Sure.
because the classes weren't as big as, well, they're not so big now, but I mean what they were a few years back. And like I said, we had religion, and the priest came. If you were in the higher grades, it was a pastor, and if you were in the lower grades, it was the assistant.
Sure.
So anyhow, they would come 2 times a week for a religious class in there, but you got the religious teaching from your sisters too, you know. But they came in especially, and they had a singing teacher that would come all around from the Dominican school, the sisters there, to go to every school. Then when we got in the higher grades, we didn't have cooking or sewing or anything like that at the Catholic school, so Washington Junior High, it's with Red Apple now, they had, we would go there a half a day
And learn that type
for
of thing.
cooking or sewing, and the boys would go for manual art and stuff like that.
Sure. Grandpa, what do you remember studying when you were in school?
Studying?
Yeah. Did you study at all, or did you just pay attention to girls?
Tell me what happened when you kissed a girl.
Well, I didn't go to East Side High for very long.
Mhm.
I took up either sheet, I think it was sheet metal
Really?
in school. I didn't play no basketball or football, thing like that.
Mhm.
And then in the spring, a couple of weeks before we're going to graduate, my dad thinks he should move. So we moved up north.
Mhm. And then after that, you didn't go to school anymore?
I went to 1 year,
Mhm.
I think it was 1937. I went to the Doreen School in Doreen.
Okay. Okay, this is now we're painting a good picture. And Uncle Ron, what about you? What do you remember about your time when you were in school?
Oh, we had regular subjects, reading, writing, and all that. And then when I got in grade school, in public school, like I say, I had to walk. We only had one teacher in the school for all 8 grades.
Wow.
That's right.
So, because you went to a smaller school, right? There was not a
Well, there
large.
was about, let's say there was about 30, 35 kids in there.
Okay.
In all 8 grades.
Wow.
And she had to teach all 8 grades all the time. And then that's when we lived in Barron. And I used to walk to school every day. I got smart though after a while in the wintertime. There was a guy that came from Cameron, that was about 4 miles east of where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to drive Highway 8. He'd go into Barron every morning. He was a gas hauler, gas and oil. And he came through about the time I was walking down the highway. And one morning I was about 10, 12 below zero. He stopped and picked me up, give me a ride to school. Well, I figured that out, that if he come through there about, if I was out on the road, I was sure to get picked up and get a ride. Otherwise,
And that was about 3 miles, you said.
yeah.
It's well below.
And there was, we had to walk at 3/4 of a mile. The road was never plowed.
Right.
I mean, there was snow up to your,
Mhm.
you know,
Speaking of,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
you just trudged along. I mean, that was it. And then my mother and dad never went with me. You take off, go by yourself. I don't know, no telephone, so they wouldn't even know if I got to school or if I didn't. And once in a while, there was a woman at her farm up about 1/4 of a mile off of the side road that she'd see me in them real cold days when I'd come out. And if I didn't have a ride, she'd call me in and to warm up and have a cookie or something warm to warm up, and then I could walk the rest of the way. School started at 9 o'clock.
And what time did it finish?
We got out at 4,
Okay. 9 to 4.
and then I had to walk home, and sometime it was dark.
You guys can go ahead and take the call. Take the call. Go.
Dan General. Yeah.
Hello, what do you want?
Yeah.
Well, I ain't napping right now, I'm busy. What? What do you want? Oh, well, we're doing... Oh, yeah? You mean you're that busy, huh? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I got a big interview going on right now. Yeah.
They probably think you're kidding.
Huh? Interviewing me is Brian Vanderhoef. He's interviewing for, find out if I know anything and what I can remember. And,
He went to high school, so he had
How
quite a
far
bit of
I'm going.
experiences there at high school.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, he graduated from high school.
Oh, definitely. Been
That's good
Yeah.
one.
here ever since the
Yeah, it's
snow.
okay.
Yeah, I
Question
had it
we'll ask
plowed
is
twice and then
whether or
I
not you
plowed
finished
finished
high
plowing it.
school.
I never went to high school.
See, there's a good subject right there.
No, why would I go to high school when I
Yeah,
come
later
back
on
and work
tonight
one
I'll
day a
call you.
week and make
Okay.
$1 a week. A
We're
week,
gonna get to that in a second.
What
Dollar.
do you mean you're going off?
a week. But that was my sister I was working for.
Oh, really?
Okay.
And,
All right.
and that meant babysitting
Yeah,
at
that-
night sometimes too.
And then in the Catholic schools then, were there lay teachers or no?
No.
No.
Okay, well,
Turn that back on, Brian.
no, it's fine.
You wanna get back?
We're actually, I wanna, this is how the conversation, I have all these questions, but when you guys say things, it reminds me of things that I wanna ask you. So for example, Uncle Ron, it took him, he had to walk about 3 miles, what's that, probably, at least, an hour walk, if not.
Oh, yeah, a
if
good
not
hour,
more.
yeah.
Grandpa, how close did you live to your schools, and how long did it take, how did you get there, and how long did it take?
2 miles when we lived east of Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And one morning it was so cold I froze my ears. And I went into the farmer and she went out and got a pan full of snow and put it on my ears to thaw them out. And then I went on to school
Wow.
the rest of the way.
But your ears swelled up though, didn't you say your
Yeah.
ears swelled up?
Your
Yeah.
grandma did too. She froze her ears too.
Really?
Just the one ear.
And how long, how far away from school did you live? And how,
Oh,
how'd
only
you get
6
there?
blocks.
Only 6 blocks?
Yeah.
And you walked there, obviously, you
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
take a bus or anything? Okay, next question is, how far in school did you actually make it? Like, what grade level did you graduate? So we'll start with Uncle Ron.
Well, I graduated from 8th grade.
Okay.
No, you graduated from high school.
Yeah, and then I went to high school. I graduated from high school.
And which high school was that?
Triple I High.
Okay, wonderful. And Grandpa, how far did you go?
8th grade,
8th grade. And what school did you end up graduating from?
Doreen School, which is in Lincoln County.
Wonderful. And then Aunt Claris?
Oh, well, I graduated from 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I went out and worked after that.
Okay, and that's what we're going to continue on next. After you finished high school or 8th grade, what did you do with your time instead of going to school? And we'll start with Aunt Claris. You have already mentioned
Well, I
you
went
to
out
work.
and I worked for my sister,
Okay,
who had 3 children at the time.
okay.
And I followed my sister Ruth from the job. Now, my grandma had more, everything to a T, see? But I'm not that kind of a person. So every time I would do something, Evelyn would say to me, that isn't the way Ruth did it. Well, I didn't tell her, but I felt like saying, I'm not Ruth, you know? But I mean, because she was more of a perfectionist, I was
Sure.
not. That's the long and
And
short.
what kind of work did you do?
Housework, babysit, cooking,
Mhm.
you name it.
And what was your wage? How much did you earn?
$1 a week.
$1 a week. Wow. Would you have considered that a lot of money than a small amount of money at the time?
I would consider it a small amount.
Okay,
I'm not that much smaller though, but it's
Okay.
small. Because when I worked for Mary May, right after I quit her job, after I got old enough and I could quit,
sure.
then, well, Aunt Joyce worked for her 1 week and wouldn't go back and work, so you know how hard she was to work for. But anyhow, then I worked for Mary May and I got $1.25.
Wow.
So that was boy, I was really rich
Sure,
at
sure.
that time. But but like I said, with my sister, I also had a babysit at night when she went out somewhere, or she went to church, or whatever she did. And if you worked there for her, then you had you babysat at night too.
Sure. Wonderful.
So,
Good. Grandpa, what about you? What was one of your first jobs, or how did you pass the time instead of going to school once you got a little older?
Before we moved back up to north, I used to work in the hay fields and the grain fields,
And how much did you earn?
$1 a day,
$1 a day. Wow, that's a lot of money.
$1 a day.
wine.
And I'll ask Uncle Ron in a second the same question. But how did you earn that money? Was that in check? Was that in cash? How did they?
Always in cash.
It was in cash. And did you keep all of that money for yourself, or did you give some of that money to your parents?
No, I think I kept it myself because to me it was such a little bit.
But there was no equipment to do the work, right? You had to manually cut the hay and all that stuff, right?
I worked on one farm where I stayed right there for 1 whole month.
Huh.
And not long enough to buy myself a bicycle. And then about that time my dad moved again.
Now, I'm curious, Grandpa, you said you mentioned you kept all the money that you earned. Did you put that in a local bank, or did you just put that in a shoebox in your drawer? Or did you just keep it in your pocket?
Probably in a box.
Okay, so you did not have a savings account in a bank or
No.
anything like that?
Shoot.
Okay.
What was bank accounts at that time?
Okay, Uncle Ron, and the same for you. What was one of your first jobs, or what did you do after you completed high school?
Well, one of my jobs was when I was in high school, I got on what they call NYA.
Mm-hmm.
That was a government,
National Youth Administration.
and we made the whole sum of $5 a month.
Wow. And what kind of work did you do in the NYA?
Anything that they had around the school, it was all schoolwork. I mean, clean up around the yard or clean up in the building or
Sure.
whatever they had, whatever the head principal could find for you to do. And a lot of times we'd have to stay, well, if we stayed with the bus for a basketball game, then we could work. Other than that, then if you were short of hours, then you could go in on a Saturday morning and work till you got your number of hours in to make you $5 a month.
And how did you receive that money? Was that in cash, or was that in some sort of check? Or
I think that come in a check,
okay.
but I don't know where I put it in the coffee can, I guess, I don't know.
But did they take?
But anyway,
Yeah.
I saved enough money then to buy me a new jacket. And I had that jacket when I came to Racine. So I bought that when I was probably a junior or senior in high school. And the first winter I wore it, I went out one night to visit some friends of mine. I had a bicycle and I was coming home. In those days there was no blacktop, you know, it was all nice gravel and that. And I got tangled up in some loose sand and it dumped me off of the bicycle. I took the whole sleeve of my jacket and just wore all the wool off. It was a wool jacket. It didn't have no fuzz or nothing on it.
Wow. Now this is going to sound like an odd question, but when you guys were younger, what did you do for fun, entertainment? What did you do to pass the time when it didn't have to do with school or work? What did you do for fun, maybe with your family or your brothers and sisters? And Clarice, we'll start with you.
Well, for one thing, our house was Grand Central Station.
Okay.
We always had all the kids in the neighborhood,
Okay.
for the older ones and the young ones. We had a player piano,
Okay.
so we would play the piano and dance. Like I said, we had a lot of dancing in our house.
That's good.
And Mother would be in the kitchen making something for us kids for treats. So everybody was over, they got treats
Mhm.
over there. We just had a heck of a good time.
That's
We
good.
did. We had a lot of entertainment. And like I said, Grandma and Grandpa both were fun people.
Oh, good.
Maybe the kids don't remember them as being fun people. I don't know if you do, Tim, as Grandma and Grandpa be. Not Grandma anyhow. No, because Grandma died at 69, so
Right.
she was real old. And she had had a stroke when I was 11 years old on my 11th birthday. She had a stroke that left her paralyzed for 12 years, and with her leg, she walked on crutches, let's put it that way, not completely paralyzed. But when she had that stroke, I don't even know how they got her into bed, because she had it at the kitchen table when we were eating supper. And she got the stroke, and my mother was a big person. She was over 200 pounds, so
Wow.
she was a big person. And how they ever got her into the bed, because they didn't have the rescue squads and
Sure.
everything like that. And when they got her there, the doctor came, and like she said, the only thing she could do at that time was hear. She couldn't see, she couldn't move, she couldn't do nothing. Grandpa had made a big thing that went over the front of where her feet were, and then they made it, he had it with wood, and then there was something else on it, and then they would put a light in there to keep the heat in for Grandma, for the circulation
Sure.
in there. So that's what they did then. But then, that same night, then of course, that's when the priest used to come and give the last sacraments and
Sure.
stuff like that. Well then, when the priest came and gave him the last sacraments, but we all had a kneel around the bed, and we all prayed, and every night until Mother got up, when she could finally get out of bed and that. Then we always had to pray the rosary after supper. That was every day, all the time anyhow. But we had to kneel on the floor in there every night and pray that rosary. The whole
Floor like
family
this.
would have to kneel
Mm-hmm.
around the bed there.
Hardwood, not carpet.
And I want to talk about, we're going to move on with the fun in a second with Grandpa and Uncle Ron.
Oh, yeah, well, that-
No, that's okay. How long was it before your mom could get up and walk around again? Because you said you prayed there every night until...
Well, she could walk with a crutch after, it was just before Christmas the next year.
Okay, so it was about a year, close
About
to
a
it.
year.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd say about a year that she was walking with crutches. And then she walked with 2 crutches, and then afterwards she walked with 1.
So she did slowly but surely regain some
Yeah, then she
movement.
went to Holy Hill.
I've heard this story.
Yeah, we were on the Holy Hill
Mhm.
then, yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a little while.
Yeah.
Okay. Grandpa, what did you do for fun when you were younger? Maybe in your young child or in your teens?
Well, in the earlier years, like I say, I worked in the hay fields. And then when we moved, I got with the neighbor boys and girls too. We used to, there was a big empty lot and we tried to shoot the golf ball. And I hit it and it went on a curve.
Right.
So I said, that's enough for me. But in the winter months, we lived kind of on a hill. So in the winter months, we slid down this long hill.
So you went sledding?
In other words, today they put salt on.
Right. Oh, okay.
In those days, they didn't. They just plowed the roads.
Mm-hmm.
So this was on
So-
a road you slid down.
I remember a gal living across the street from me. We both went down on the sled. Boy, was she heavy.
And Uncle Ron,
So that's
what did you do for fun or entertainment?
Oh, when I was in grade school, we used to we'd train dogs to pull us on sleds.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had 2 dogs, and I trained them to pull a wagon in the summertime with wood on it, all wood from the woodshed up to the house with the 2 dogs. And in the wintertime, my buddy, well, I used to do it too, once in a while, but one of my buddies up the road, he had a big police dog, and we were trying to train that one. Well, that was a little harder job because he knew where he wanted to go, and we didn't. But we'd go to the mailbox on Saturday, because our mail come out on the main road, we had to walk out. Well, we used to take the dog out there on a sled. We're going out, it was kind of hard. And well, in the meantime, my father made us a sled out of a pair of 4-foot skis. And that rode over the top of the sled, or the snow. It didn't cut through like the little runners did. And we would go out and get the mail, and going back, you had to hang on to that sled for dear life, because if it went over a drift and you bounced and fell off, that way you walked the rest of the way. The
dog just kept going.
He knew where home was, and he just kept going.
Okay. Good. These are, by the way, this is going fantastic so far. Now let's talk a little bit more of some serious topics. We've heard some mentioning of the Great Depression, when the Great Depression hit and whatnot. Now, President Roosevelt was elected in 1932, so you would have been about 8, and Grandpa, you would have been about 12, and Uncle Ron, you would have been about 9. Do you have any memories of President Roosevelt, even as you got older? Because he was in office for a long time, obviously.
Yeah.
But can you remember...
He died just before the World War ended.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but can you remember President Roosevelt before World War II? Can you remember what he was like? Do you remember hearing his voice on the radio and things
Oh,
of
yeah.
that nature? Was he popular at the time? Did
He
your
was
parents?
popular as far as I was concerned. I mean,
Yeah.
I figured that he was. Everybody seemed to be talking, and he was finding jobs for people, and he was
Right.
trying to help out. He did a lot of things that he has not gotten credit from this president now.
Right.
You know, he hasn't really. But he really did a lot. If you lived in during the Depression there, you would have known exactly what
Sure.
he was doing. But he was trying to keep the wages, get the wage people working by going like the CCs and his dad working on the highway.
Hmm.
They did all that, he had all that.
They call them make work projects.
Yeah.
Just make work construction
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah,
Right.
so they could earn some money. It wasn't enough, they were still had to be on, well, welfare or whatever you want to call it. They needed some assistance.
Hmm.
But at least they had some money that they could work with too.
Okay.
You know, because he was there looking for all the angles that he could find the place and the money to do it with, to have these people. He didn't go out and borrow the money like,
Right. Right. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand
so it
completely.
was a lot different. I mean, he was a good president.
Hmm.
I would say he was a very good president. And I think most of the people that I've ever talked to that lived through with him has done nothing but brag about him.
Right. Well, they say, and I'll ask you guys the same question in a moment, but the previous president was President Hoover. I'm not sure
Right.
if you remember that or not. And he was not a bad man at all.
No.
It just happened to go bad when he was president, and he kind of got blamed for a lot of that, even though he wasn't a bad guy
Yeah,
and all of
that's
that. But they say that President Roosevelt, many people liked him because whether his programs worked or not, he actually just tried to help the American public. Whether they worked or not is something
Yeah.
of debate, but they say that he actually cared about the people, and his
Yeah,
wife
he had-
cared about the people.
He had more compassion than
Mhm.
a lot of them did.
Right. Now, this is going to be a question for you two now, is obviously you remember President Roosevelt. How did you guys come to find out about the New Deal programs? I've now heard you mention the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, and you mentioned the NYA, the National Youth Administration, and you both worked in the CCs. How did you guys how did you find out about Social Security or the Public Works Administration? Was that just common knowledge? Did you hear about it on the radio? How did you come to find out about it? Uncle Ron, we'll start with you.
Well, Social Security was put in effect in 1936, I
Right,
believe.
yeah.
37.
And
And I had
you
to
had
buy-
Right.
you
Well,
had to
actually,
go
it was
sign
signed in
up for it
1935. So.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
to get your name and number,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that you worked. Depends on what kind of a job you had, whether they deducted Social Security or not.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a lot of cash jobs, so they didn't deduct it.
So
But
speaking of really quick, how would you have taken that? Like right now I can open up my check and I can say, wow, a lot of my tax dollars are going to the federal government or to Medicare, Social Security. Social Security was brand new at the time. Now it's been around for, 80 years. What was your first thought was that okay with you that they were taking money out of your check and putting it someplace else?
I'll tell you the truth, I don't even remember what
Okay.
what it was all about. I mean, as a young person, I don't think you put any too much thought into it at
Sure.
that time like you do today,
Sure, I understand.
because it was such a minimum amount that came out while you were only making
Right.
35.
when I come here to Racine to work, I started out here on this railroad out here, 44 cents an hour.
Would you have considered that a good wage at the time?
Well, at that time, you thought you were making, you had the world by the, you know what, and, you were making big money,
Mm-hmm.
but,
But with Social Security, there was no Medicare or anything
Right.
like that. It was strictly Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And it was strictly for just the person that it was under. In other words, now the wife gets it.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it was not.
just the social
It was just for
the
strictly the
basic
person that put in.
wage earner that had any social security.
Right. So if you were connected in some other way to that person, you might not be able to draw from
No,
that.
no, like when my grandfather, retired, what the hell did he get? I think he got, on Social Security at that time. That was way back in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
You got $18 a month. And my grandma got nothing.
Cause see, then the spouses never got anything,
Spouses didn't get a thing.
just the one that put into Social Security.
Right. Grandpa, how did you find out about some of the New Deal programs?
Oh, just from listening to the news. And my dad, when we lived in Madison, he worked at one time for the WPA. Alex Roosevelt, he had
Mhm.
that. And about that time was when the Civilian Conservation Corps came about.
And the WPA, I think that's the Works Progress Administration, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be.
I'm pretty sure. I know. I try to study this as much as I can, but
I think they started civil service for the seas. They started that back in 1934
oh, did they? Okay. that makes
because I was a young brat at that time. But I can remember that some of them. Well, my grandma and grandpa had a big house on the farm, and CC started, and there was a lot of older men got into that right off the bat through no work. I mean, they were taking people, and my grandma took in a couple, a man and a wife, and they rented the room because he was in CC's, and he was allowed to live off base.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what kind of a job he had, but I mean that was long before my time. I was probably in grade school yet when that went in,
Sure, sure.
and then later on, different ones I know, and then my uncle, he went in. He was in twice. He went in, and you were only allowed to serve 6 months, and then you had to sign up again. Then you were only allowed a year to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had to be out for a period of time before you could go back and sign up again.
And how much did the CCs pay? Was that per week, per month?
$30 a month. And your
$30
clothes
a month.
and room and board.
Wow.
That included your clothes and room and board?
Huh?
That included your clothes
Yeah,
and room and board?
room
So
and
you had
board.
uniform then when you were in CC? You had uniforms to wear?
Yeah. They were
Yeah, and everything.
a bit similar to what the Army had. They were wool uniforms. We didn't have jackets like they had, but we had regular pants and a shirt and that.
Okay, this is what I think we're going to do. We're going to talk about the CCs a little bit. I'll have another question for you guys. Then I think we're going to take a break. Get up, go to the bathroom. I'm going to want another cup of coffee because it was delicious. Okay? And then we'll come back and then we'll talk maybe a little bit in the later 1930s and 40s. So we'll finish up with the CCs. I also have a question after that about some popular Americans that I want to talk to you guys about. But we'll go with the CCs and then we'll take a little break from there, okay? So Uncle Ron's already kind of talking about it. You had mentioned your uncle, and you mentioned the 6 months, and you had to take some time off, and then a year. How was there an office that you signed up in? How did it come to be where you could sign
Well,
up to be in the CCs?
It was like almost like a draft office.
Okay.
The government had an office similar to the Army draft, and that's where you went to sign up for it.
And
It was run by a local government situation.
And what city did you sign up in?
Huh?
What city did you sign up for the CC?
Tomahawk.
It was in Tomahawk. And Grandpa, what about you?
I don't know.
Okay. And in what year did you each go serve your first year in the CCs, Grandpa?
Well, in the fall of '39,
Mm-hmm.
in '39, my sister Doris was working on a farm, and this fella came, fell in love with her, married her later on.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just leaving the CC's. And
Okay.
he said something about, now there's the place you should go.
So you heard about
That's-
it through word of mouth then?
So then we signed up in January of 1940. I went into camp.
Okay, and Uncle Ron, what year did you go?
I went in 40, yeah, 1940.
And so,
I signed up in September.
You worked in 40 there?
I was in 40, yeah, because I came here in 41, and I had served my 6 months in 40, and then I was going to serve another 6 months in 41, but then I decided to come down here to work.
okay, and is that where you guys had actually met each other then, was in the CC's?
No, we met up there.
At the CC's.
You know, they were sent here by God to come to receive.
Right?
Now, did you have to get your parents' permission to join this CC camp?
Yeah, but as the story goes, you know, you get $30, but you only get to keep 5, and the rest was sent home. Well, then my mother kept that money till she went to California.
So you had $5 to spend for a whole month.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you go to the PX, and it was a nickel for this, and 10 cents for a package of cigarettes, and nickel for a soda, and they had quite a PX.
No, what's a PX? What is it? Is it like a store?
It was a. It wasn't no grocery store. It was just an ordinary soda fountain, like you know what I mean. It they had candy bars, and they had cigarettes and soda, and they had beer that it tasted like beer, but it didn't have no power.
And no alcohol?
And they had a library in there that you could sit and read books or
Sure.
that.
Oh, well, let's continue with the CC's. So once you signed up, and you served in Tomahawk, that was where your camp was, and Grandpa, you also served in Tomahawk, is that
And
correct?
Tomahawk.
Okay, so what was the initiation like? I mean, you didn't obviously walk in your first minute and just go to work. Did you have some sort of preparation period where they kind of taught you what they expected, or how did the first week or couple of days work?
Just like when you went in the army, they just run you in there and give you a bunch of clothes and your bed clothes and give you the barracks to go in, and that was it. And next morning they roll call at 5 o'clock and come out and shoot off your mouth about your name, and
Okay,
after
well-
that then you could go to chow, and then they call you back out and, well, you, are you truck drivers? Yeah, well, okay, then you went over there and you got a wheelbarrow.
Okay, you mentioned chow. Grandpa, what kind of food did you eat when you were in the CC's?
Well, I really don't remember, but I remember the pile of potatoes that you had to peel
By hand, right?
by hand. And then, of course, I was on, what is that?
KP.
KP duty. That's when that picture was taken. And
Well, did you work in the kitchen a long time or not?
I think your turn came up. Your turn there. You never was.
I never got the kitchen, no.
No.
I volunteered for some other things.
Okay, so Grandpa, you mentioned that it was on like a rotation. You worked certain jobs, or you worked in the kitchen for a brief time. What kind of jobs did they offer you guys to work, and how did they decide who did the jobs?
Well, he just was told to go with that crew there. I shoveled gravel till the wrists were sore. You know, the truck would back up into the gravel pit, and you stood up on the bank and shoveled till it was full, and they'd take off. Next truck would come in, shovel it full.
See what they were doing at that time. The government, Roosevelt come out with the idea of making roads in their national forest.
Mhm.
And they were making what they called fire lane roads through these national forests in case of fire. Well then, like he said, we had the job, they had little trucks and hand shoveled all the stuff in, and then they were graveling these roads so they weren't mud that deep. I mean, they graveled these roads out into the forest so that they could get in there. And that was one of your jobs. That was, well, it was a year-round job. I had it in the fall of the year for a while,
Yeah.
shoveling in there. And then the guys themselves, they would kind of set up crews and race to see who could load their truck the fastest, just for the hell of it.
So some small competition.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, now that was graveling. I've heard about the cooking as well. Were there anything else that you had to do, like with the trees or anything?
Oh, we planted, I don't know about Ron, but we planted thousands and thousands of trees. Maybe they're only about this high. And you got a little shovel. You slam it in the ground, push it forward, put the tree in, and go behind it, and then you just keep going.
Now, were you allowed to just plant it wherever you wanted, or was it pretty
They
specific?
had a kind of they had it set up with a kind of a plow that they went through in rows, like out in the open areas and that. They made it a furrow, and then that's where you come along and put the tree in there. It was kind of isolated to the point of the stuff squeezing the daylights out of the thing. It had a chance to expand a little bit.
And now, so would you say the trees were in almost perfect rows for the most part then? Or close, or they were, you said that they had kind of predetermined where they were gonna plant the trees. Once you finished an area, did you kind of go on to another area and replant trees?
Oh, they had a lot of areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was on that crew. I got off of that crew.
And what did you do instead once you got off that crew?
Well, I was on what they call the gravel crew for quite a while. And then we had one conservation officer that came in. I don't know where he was from, but anyway, when they were cleaning up the roadsides, see, that was another project that they had, that they go along these main highways, these federal roads and county and state roads, and they would clean in an area about 100 feet on each side of the road. They take out everything, all the underbrush, everything, so that it was a kind of a fireproof thing, that the minute the fire, it wouldn't be able to start right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cut out some big trees and different things. And this conservation officer got the idea that they needed lumber. I don't know, they were going to build something anyway, and they needed lumber. So he had them cut these big trees out. And they were logs maybe about so big around and about 10, 12 feet long. And he set up a sawmill out there. I don't know where he got all the, what do you call it, but he got a sawmill in there. It was a small hand-operated deal. And I don't know, one day I was talking with him and that, and he says, what are you doing? I said, well, I was on this crew and that. He says, how'd you like to be on my crew for a while? I said, what are we going to do? He said, help me run the sawmill, saw lumber. So I went up and I was helping him roll the logs on and turn them over to run it through the saw, make 2x2s or 2x10s or whatever would come out of it.
And then you were on that crew for a
Then I
while.
was on that crew for a while. And then after that, I got myself a desk job. Well, not really a desk job. I took a job as driving a command officer around, an inspector. They had one that was go around and inspect the camps, all the camps. So we had 9 of them that we had to make a circle all the time.
And how far apart were the camps?
Oh, they were high as 50, 60 miles away.
Oh, wow.
So they had a command car, what they called it. It was a brand new 35 Chevy, 4-door. And I drove that with the command man then. He sat in the back seat and I'm on the front, you know. That was one of the best jobs I had.
Okay, now Grandpa brought this picture in, which is going to help me out. Now we're almost finished with this little session.
He's got papers that he wants.
So I'm also curious, right here, and then I'll show this differently on the picture. But you guys look at this, and you guys can just pass this back and forth when I ask you the questions. But I'm curious, you stayed in like Army barracks, and I'm curious to know what was the barrack life like? Were the guys nice to each other? Do you guys kind of shoot the breeze out once in a while? Or, you know, what did you guys have? You guys have a good time? You play jokes on each
Oh,
other?
they'd play
Oh, yeah.
cards and one thing another.
They'd play joke on some guys.
Oh yeah,
He'd flip his bunk or something.
short sheet 'em.
But you had to, when you got up in the morning, you had to roll up your, like a sleeping bag on
Army blankets.
it, army blanket.
Okay, so you had mentioned earlier that you got up about 5:30. That's about right. And then you had some food, and then you went out. Now, did you guys stop for lunch, or did you just keep working right
No,
on?
a lot of times they'd come into the camp for lunch and then go back out.
Okay, and then you go back out. Lunch was maybe about a half hour, would you say, an hour?
About an hour
Okay, and after you went out, how long did you stay out after that?
till 4 or 5 o'clock.
And then after 5 o'clock, was that time just your
Oh,
own?
you had to come in and clean up before the supper, and
Okay,
after that, your time was your own.
okay, and you didn't pay for any meals or anything like that?
No, everything was paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And then once in a while, once or twice a week, they'd have what they call a recreation truck that would go to town. And that was the Army part of the base. See, the other part was civil service. That was forestry and that. That was different from the initial part of the camp. Because the initial part of the camp was more or less run under Army restrictions.
Sure.
So then, like you say, then they had taken one of the trucks with big tarp on and bunks in there, and you'd go to town, and then they'd drop you off and pick you up about 10 o'clock, take you back to the base, and
Did you see this?
then when you got back, lights were out.
Right.
I'm right.
So, Grandpa, if you wanted to communicate with somebody off a base, how did you normally do that? If you wanted to write, you know, if you wanted to get a hold of your dad or your sister or your brother,
I only got home once in a while.
once in a while?
Once in a while. One time, John and Walt picked me up, and on the way home, we stopped to fish.
Oh, really?
And beautiful fish that they caught. But I never got a taste of them. They took me home, and then
See, now on this picture, basically, this was where the medical end of the thing was. The kind of the hospital, or
How
you were sick.
often did someone get hurt while you were?
Well, it depended. It was basically sick call.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had a cold or something.
Now, this is a kind of a tough question, but do you remember anybody ever seriously getting injured while you were on the job? You know, let's say a tree fell on.
no,
Okay, well that's good.
no.
No. See, then down here, this was mess hall.
Mm-hmm.
These were all barracks back here.
Okay.
In fact, we were in that one over there.
Right.
You go up there today, this is all trees.
All trees now?
It's all trees growing.
All trees.
Now, did a truck take you to the job site every morning? Did a truck take you from camp to the job site every morning?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah?
Yeah.
yeah. You got, well, They had one truck, they had more men than, I mean, the gravel trucks, there was always two guys. And then they had another truck that took the guys and the tools out onto the job, and that depended on where you were working. I mean, it might have been 5-6 miles from camp or better.
Right.
Can I,
Go ahead.
when you were talking about when you went off your CC camp, but can you tell the story of the time you were visiting home and you needed to get back and you couldn't get a ride back, so you walked all
I
the way
walked
back?
all the way out to Highway 51, started north towards Tomahawk, and nobody would pick me up. I walked into Tomahawk, and right at the bridge that goes over the Wisconsin River, there was a little hamburger stand. And I didn't have no money, but before that I went into the back door, as you'd say, of a tavern, and you put money in a machine or something. Anyway, I gained 10 pennies, I guess it was. And I bought one hamburger and a root beer. And I walked over to the bridge and ate that. And that was 5 o'clock in the afternoon already.
What time did you leave to
2
start?
o'clock.
2, so you walked 3 hours already.
And so then I started heading north. And of course you don't know where Burr Allen is buried now. But anyway, you take that road between 51 and,
That was Highway C, Highway 91 at one time.
well anyway, then I started walking, and some ladies with a Model T Ford come along, and they said, "Do you need a ride?" And I said, "You betcha." So they took me as far as Bradley,
Yeah.
and they said, "I'm sorry, but we can't take you any farther." Anyway, I started walking again. I got into camp in my barracks at, I think it was 10 o'clock.
At night?
Yeah, I just made it.
So you made it in time. You didn't get in trouble or anything.
Yeah, that's one
They
experience.
had bed check it once in a while at 10 o'clock or 10:30.
How many miles do you figure that was that you walked?
50 miles. I
50?
figured it out one time.
Now that's walking, or was that walking plus the
Plus the
the
riding,
ride?
few miles.
Well, in a Model T probably wasn't much faster than walking.
Eh. Do you guys have any other thoughts? That you
Wasn't
want to
much
share?
warmer either, I'll tell you that.
Graham, I see that you have some notes in your hands. Is there anything else that you want to share that I maybe didn't ask here, that maybe that you guys didn't talk about?
What's that?
Is there anything else that you want to share? I noticed you have
Oh.
notes in your hands. Or
Well, I had a lot of different jobs. I was on the surveying crew at different times, planted trees, but whenever when the train came through, sometimes they'd load up with coal and the flames would be going out of the smokestack and it would land in grass, and there'd be a grass fire. But nobody knew it until it was reported. And we all had to jump in a truck and they took us out there and put out the fires. But one particular time, I was way down on the other end where the train had lit grass first. And I was chopping away to beat the band, and I got up and looked around and there was nobody there. They went back to camp and forgot about me. So I started walking and they come along and picked me up.
Now, how did word get to the camp that there was a fire?
They counted.
No, when the fire started, and if you guys were in camp, and you had to go out and put the fires out,
I can't answer that one.
because there were no telephones.
Yeah, well, that's the
No.
time.
Well, there was phone in camp.
yeah,
They had phone in camp.
No,
Did
okay.
they have towers? Didn't they have fire tower?
Oh, they had a lot of fire towers, yeah. Fire
Yeah.
towers were
Yeah.
100 feet high. And
Somebody
they'd
think of it.
go up there and the guy would sit there for 8 hours. Usually there was 2 or 3 guys that would man that thing a day. And they'd climb up there and then they sat there with field glasses and they could see for miles around there. They seen smoke coming up. They knew the area by the map. Then they would call that area and tell them that there was a fire in a certain area out there. And they could, by the map, they had a description of, we'll say, a certain area off of a certain road that was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
They could tell that by the looking at the distance that about where it was. And then they would send somebody out there. And when they did, they'd send out a truck with men on it, and they had water cans that you put on your back.
Oh, yeah.
10-gallon water tanks.
Oh.
Strap them on your shoulder. They had a hose on it and a pump on it. You know, you had to go like this to put out the fire. Spray water on the fire.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
when people reported to the CCs, did you report as one big group, or was it, you know, the guy from Racine, the guy from Tomahawk? Did people come and go pretty much every day, or was it group to group that you went at a time?
Well, they were more or less a group.
Okay.
Did you guys build any of the state parks then? Your
Well, they
crew didn't?
did a lot of, where we were, they didn't do it, but
No.
in some areas they did. They did a lot of building, like when, well, you remember Bob Billington? He was in one of these camps, and they were building bridges across some of the rivers that went through the state park, so that they could get from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Like Devil's Lake,
Hmm?
up by Baraboo, Devil's Lake?
Oh,
Wasn't that built by the
way up.
CCs?
They were up in, up around Superior, even up there, building some of that in the state parks. They cleaned out a lot of those state parks. Because that's where Bob got his knowledge of cement work. Is
Mhm.
when he was in the seas, he got into one of those crews and they were building bridges. And well, bridges, some of them were building over a small stream or something, a walk path. They'd make it out of concrete or whatever. And then when they would to reserve or preserve some of the concrete, they'd mix it up real wet and they'd have forms. Then they'd drop big rocks in there to absorb and that would knit together.
Now, what about faith? What did you guys do for service on Saturday or Sunday? Did they give you an option to go to some sort of church? Did they have a priest or a pastor come in for
No, you were more or less on your own with
you?
that.
Okay, I understand.
At least I didn't. I mean, of course, we were 13 miles, 15 miles from town, so you
Sure.
didn't walk unless they had a truck going in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We went in on Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
We'd ride into Tomahawk.
And what kind of stuff would you guys do? You go to the hamburger stand in town?
We'd
or-
probably go to a movie.
Yeah,
for
they
one
had a
thing.
movie for a nickel or a dime.
Buy an ice cream cone.
Then go to the soda fountain and get a nickel ice cream cone or
Mhm.
something and wait for the truck to pick you up to go back.
Right.
Now, do you happen to remember any of the movies that you might have seen during that time? You didn't see Gone with the Wind or anything like that?
No, that's...
Okay, I kind of want to
Tell you
change.
the truth, I didn't go to that many movies.
Well,
Of course, I had a relation in town,
Mhm.
so
Oh, yeah.
once in a while, when I get time like that, we get in town early enough, then I would walk over to one of my aunts lived in town and visit there for a while, and then go back.
Wonderful. Well, we're gonna pause here in a second, but I'm curious, we're gonna change gears because it's not really related to what we just talked about or what we're gonna talk about afterward. But, you know, a lot of my kids are always interested in the heroes of, you know, like the big celebrities of the 20s and 30s. Do you guys remember hearing about any of the heroes of the 20s, Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig? Do you remember hearing about them on the radio? Or maybe, you know, Charles Lindbergh, that might have been a little before your time. And Clarice, do you remember any specific heroes or celebrities at the
Oh, I
time?
remember of when you just said,
Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig,
No.
Lindbergh?
Lindbergh.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah, when he flew,
okay.
you know, remember that, we had a lot of that on there.
Because that was big news at the
Oh,
time.
that was big news, yeah, that was.
What
yeah.
year would that be?
Of course, huh?
What year would?
You know, off the top of my head, I can't, that was, I don't remember.
I don't remember what year it was
Mhm.
either, but I remember of hearing about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like Amelia Earhart,
Sure, sure.
right? You know, she was a woman that
Right.
they never did find
They
her.
never did find her, that's
they never
right.
found her, no. And whenever there was any, like Joe Louis,
Sure.
when that was over, when the fight was over, you listened to that, and we didn't, I didn't, but they did listen to it on the radio. Then it was over, and all of a sudden you hear the paper boys, extra, extra, read all about it. They come out with the paper. They didn't wait till the next day. Right after that was over,
They
then
printed
you
it.
hear about that. Yeah, so that, any type of whenever there was anything that was related to something like famous like that,
Mm-hmm.
they always had an extra out of it whenever anything happened. And I think the hardest week we put in with your dad and your grandpa, your grandpa and grandma, was the week that we waited for them to meet one another.
Really?
Because Ron was getting it from your grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
and I was getting it from your mother. If they aren't decent people, that's
Well,
all we
I thought we were
heard.
gonna have to get on tape the whole story of how they all.
Actually, I'm recording this whole entire lunch.
Oh,
Yeah, that's,
That way we can just have casual conversation.
but my back is blocking it over there, so.
That's fine.
No, I hear it, right in front of you, Clarence.
okay.
Whoops, got it?
Yep.
So how did you two meet each other? How did
Well-
that work out?
I was going with a guy, and we got into a fight.
What was his name?
His name was, what the heck?
Must not have been important.
There wasn't Ron Ball.
Al Burdick.
Okay.
Al Burdick. Well, I went with a few guys, but anyhow, and I got mad at him. So I said, I'm not even gonna go around with all these kids that we're going around with. So I went across the street to the neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and they lived upstairs of the neighbors where I went to. And at that time, that was about 3 months after they moved, right?
Yeah.
But see, the first part of it is, they were helping, they were moving. They moved on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the two guys were helping the grandma, the mother-in-law and that,
Mhm.
mother. And my mother said to us, now there's two nice guys to go with.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandma, and you know how she is, she's very quiet and
Mhm.
stuff. She put her hands on her hip and she says, what are we supposed to do? Ask them for a date? And that's just the way she said it.
Wow.
And
Your
she'd
grandma.
never done that before. But anyhow, we listened to our mother. We each married one.
Really?
Those are the two guys right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how you met him.
Yeah.
Did they finally ask you out on a date then, or how did that
Oh,
work?
yeah, well, see, the date, we fixed a blind date for your grandma and grandpa.
Sure.
But then, the next day we were walking, or not the next day, this was on a Saturday. And on Sunday, Ruth Miller, one of our neighbors, we went downtown and he was driving, he was scooping the loop, as they called it,
Sure.
and he picked us up. Well, I thought Ruth Miller was going with him. So she sat in the middle and I sat on the end by the door.
Mhm.
And for some reason, and I don't know why, and I still don't know how it happened, really. But anyhow, Uncle Ron and we were holding hands behind her.
Don't know how it happened.
Yeah,
No, but the thing of it is, then Ruth Miller says to me, Clarice, would you get out of the car a minute? And I said, yeah, I don't know what you want me out of the car for. She stands there. I can take a hint.
Yeah.
So that was it.
She walked home and you sat next to Ron.
I sat next to him, yes, and I had gone with him ever since. I went that day, and I think we went outside of 1 or 2 days until he went in service. I saw him every night. See, the difference is he worked days and your dad worked nights.
I worked nights.
Yep.
No, I didn't. I was gonna say for 7 years, but I didn't.
Well, you worked nights for quite a while though, because you worked
It was
after you
quite
were
a while.
after you lived on Albert Street. You're still working nights.
Should I tell you the story about our boss that I had in the foundry?
Let's hear it.
He came to work one night with a big shiner. Everybody asked him, boy, you really run into a door somewhere. No, I was chopping wood and the piece flew off and came right up and hit me in the eye. And the truth came out that him and his wife was at a tavern and she got mad at him and took her big purse and came around like that. And, you know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's how you two met. How did it come to be that you set up my grandma and grandpa on a date? Was it Uncle Ron's idea? Was
I
it?
guess it was mutual. He wasn't going out with anybody in particular that
Okay.
we knew of, and your mother wasn't going out, because your grandma. She didn't date a lot.
Mhm.
She was gonna be a sister at one time.
Really?
Yeah.
But she had none of
She
that.
was a sister.
She was a sister, but then she became a mother, not, but no sisters or brothers, or no sisters in that order. No, she was thinking about being a sister. But she might have made a good sister to a point, but I think she would have been too much of a perfectionist, because that's what she was when she was younger. Like you've probably heard the story of her crying every day she went to school.
No, I've never heard that story.
You didn't?
No, tell me about it, please.
Oh, every day that she went to school, she didn't want to go. She hated school. She liked to go to school. She liked the kids, but she just didn't want to go to school. They had a time getting her to go to school because she just didn't want to go. But she was a perfectionist. So when she did her homework, which I never did, see, I'm just the opposite of your grandma. So if you don't know. But anyhow, she would do her paper. If it was supposed to be a question mark, and she put another sign on there that wasn't a question mark, she'd do her whole thing. She'd sit there and cry, and then she'd do it over.
Wow.
Whatever,
I can't imagine anybody being upset about being late for school or doing that.
you were just like your grandma when it comes to that. The
Yeah,
last word on his page could be wrong, he'd have to redo the whole thing.
yeah. Well, that was her. So that's why I think she hated to go to school, was because she was such a perfectionist.
Afraid to make
To go.
mistakes and
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
uh-huh.
Here's an interesting question, Grandpa. Grandpa, did you have difficulty getting Uncle John to go to school?
Yeah.
Did he know that Grandma didn't like to go to school? Probably not, right?
I think the kids all knew that, didn't you? Know that your mom didn't like to go to school? No?
Absolutely not, no, never heard of it.
She didn't say it until later on after the kids were older. When she told me one time, she said, oh, she always felt so bad because John was so hard to get to go to school.
It was.
And she said, and I was like that, and she felt guilty for having to send him to school when she didn't want him to go in the first place.
Yeah, well, she told me, she says, I hated when every one of my kids started school,
Really?
because she did not like it. I mean, I really can't say, I think it's because she was a perfectionist, and she wanted everything. Well, actually, when I was in 5th grade, and your mother was a good speller, I'm the worst world speller, and that sister, she'd say to me, you're not like your sister Ruth. She can spell. How come you can't? Well, we're different people. But I didn't have nerve enough to say that.
Of
But
course not.
At that time, you didn't have enough nerve.
no, I wouldn't have. I probably would have.
Probably weren't allowed
when I
to
got
speak to
home.
a teacher that way.
Yeah, I'm curious. Did you guys ever remember any students speaking out against a teacher or being rude to a teacher or anything like that?
No, I don't remember any.
Okay.
Never.
Because it happens almost every day at school now, and I'm just curious.
Mm-mm.
What would be a penalty? What would be something that might happen to a student if they acted out in class or?
According
Well,
to my
probably.
dad, it would be going home, because you'd get it far worse going home than
Oh,
you would.
yeah, you didn't even want to tell them, didn't pay to tell you when you got, if you got punishment. We didn't get hit. We never got hit at school.
Right.
But sometimes, you know, if I didn't have my homework, which I was very much not having it, then she would make me stay at school and during noon hours, the afternoon hours to the recess time.
Sure.
And then I'd have to sit there and finish the work I didn't have done.
Oh.
I did my work where you get about 15, 20 minutes in between classes that you had a chance, whatever subject you had a chance to work.
Sure.
Well, whatever I got done there, that was what I had the next day for school. So.
Time's
that's
up,
what-
she couldn't finish.
Yeah, well, I had already worked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing that we were so much different. She had to have everything perfect. And I always said, I didn't do that because I wasn't gonna cry every day I went to school. But I think I was lazy.
See, now, and Clarice, you might not be too far off. You've mentioned that you thought my grandma might be a sister if she hadn't met such a beautiful man, Willis
Right.
over there. You might not be too far off. If you remember a few months back, when the priest was speaking about grandma after she passed away, he said something that I for some reason, I can't forget. He said Ruth was very Catholic. And then he paused, and he said it again. She was very Catholic. She was very into her faith a lot. When you say Grandpa, she liked to pray. Now, my dad says that you guys prayed, that he prayed the rosary after every meal. Grandpa, that's true that you guys prayed after every meal. Is that something that you continued with after, you got
I
married?
did we prayed it until all the kids one was working here, one was working
Sure.
there. You didn't,
Mm-hmm.
it's something. We could have probably prayed it a little more
Sure.
sometimes, but not like Mom and Dad.
Right.
I mean, like I said, we prayed at every meal. If our friends came over, we could have the kids, they could be in the house.
Mm-hmm.
They could either be in the living room or we set it by the kitchen table is where we set it,
Mm-hmm.
Or otherwise, they could come in the kitchen, but they had to be quiet or otherwise say the rosary with
Were they
us.
allowed to say it with you if they wanted to?
Yes.
Okay.
And, well, I don't know why my girlfriend, my best girlfriend, was not Catholic, and she learned how to pray the rosary by standing or sitting waiting for me when we were praying the rosary.
Do you remember the incident where your dad was saying the rosary and four was sitting in the front room and your mother hollered out, Dad, Dad, they're sitting in the front room or something.
Oh, yeah, Dad was gonna come out and turn the lights.
In his underwear.
We had lights on the wall, And Dad saw the lights in there and he was started to walk out and my mom said, John, they're still in there yet. Don't turn off the lights yet. But did he make it to did you guys see him in his long johns?
He got into the dining room, that's about as far as he got.
Yeah.
But he was the one, he slept in his underwear. No pajamas or nothing.
Oh,
Well,
they did years ago.
the old Union suits, they
With
had,
a slit in the back.
they had a slit in the back that you had to button. If you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to pull them
You
apart.
mean the flap this way or the one sideways?
The side, it
Ooh,
was,
those would have been harder to work.
it was almost like your shorts you got today. But in the front, where you can go to the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
that opened up. The only thing, there was a button on there. So there was,
And that was the back.
And you know
Oh, I
what?
had to work some of
Jackie's
them.
making union suits again, people want them.
Yeah, that's what they're called.
Uh-huh.
they're comfortable. Say that.
A lot of history.
Can't say I've ever worn a union suit before.
And I can say it, and they were wool too, by the way.
Mhm.
Which
Wool.
was itchy.
Yeah.
It was itchy against your skin. But what was the big deal about it? That they could absorb moisture or something? That's why men's uniforms were made out of wool or something?
Well, they were a lot warmer. I mean, that was, wool was a warm cloth. I mean, there was no wind, no nothing. You could,
See, they didn't have all this synthetic stuff that they got now. Everything was cotton wool.
I got a sweater that I had made while we were square dancing that was what they call Canadian wool. My sister made them for me, and then she put a lining in them. You could walk out in 20 below zero with that on, and never be cold. In fact, I got them hanging in the closet yet.
Right.
But the only thing is, we can't get rid of them because they got our name on them.
They got our name, they got square dancing, so that's when we
Square dance on the back, big couple square dancing, then down on the pocket, because people were stealing these things in wherever you were sometime. So my sister put our name on the pocket, and did it right in the pocket as she was knitting, in the color, put your name on it. So if somebody did steal it, they couldn't, no, that ain't mine, that's somebody else's.
And then we go to church on Saturday night, because we went square dancing on Saturday night. And different people would stop us when we had those sweaters on. And they just wanna know where we got those most beautiful sweaters, because they were nice. I can't do any of that kind
Uncle
of
Ron's
stuff.
sister did beautiful work. In fact, I still have the Afghans and things that Aunt Martha and everybody made, you know, the pot holders and things like that, when you kids were babies, that I got for shower gifts.
Yep, a lot of things were handmade then.
They handmade a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
No, Aunt Clarice, I've heard a lot of stories about you and my grandma where you guys would just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. What kind of stuff would you talk about? Would you just make jokes or how did
Well, there was stuff that we did and we laughed about years ago what we did. And I have to say, your mother wasn't always pious. No, see, I was the younger one then. I was the youngest.
Sure.
So my cousins from up north, they would come down, Ray and Bob and the Votes, you know, they'd come down. And they'd stay for quite a while. Well, you know what they had me do one time? Go out on the road, and we had horse and buggies horses delivering milk and bacon and stuff. And they had their, go get one of those horse apples, put it on a stick, and try to sell it to the guy in the corner that was kind of a crab.
You know what a horse apple is, don't you? Horse poop. Because horses go and
Right.
don't call them
And
horse
that's
apples.
what they did. Because I was the youngest one, I had,
She didn't know, she wasn't supposed to know any better.
Tell them what your mom made you do when she thought you didn't go to church or something.
oh, yeah. No, not when I didn't go to church, when Roger had, my cousin, he lived with us because his mother died when she was young. So he did something, mother never spanked, never touched him in any which way like that. But she says, okay, Roger, she says, you go to, and she was with her stroke at that time. She says, you go to church and you pray the rosary. So I snickered, because I thought it was funny. And she said, you go to church and pray it too. So I went to church and I prayed the rosary. And as I'm coming by her bedroom door, I thought it, but I must have said it out loud. At least I'm holier. Back to church and pray another rosary.
Wow. Interesting.
And but I mean, mother couldn't have gotten out of bed. She couldn't have hurt
Right.
us in any which way. But you did what she said.
You always did what your parents told you. And your grandma would send Aunt Claire's to the store to get bananas.
That one you're thinking about? Yeah, well, she sent me. My dad had to have a banana every day. Even during the war, he had a banana every day. I don't know, I don't like bananas, but anyhow, and I don't like them. I mean, I'll eat a little bit because I have to once in a while. But Ruth, your grandma was taking care of the house. My mother was up north by my grandpa's. And she was, by that time, she was helping in the house and there. Well, she was taking care of it. She sent me to the store to get bananas. And we always got 4 bananas. Every time it was 10 cents worth.
For a dime.
For a dime,
Wow.
4 bananas. So I come home, but on the way coming home, and it was just a short block. I practically choked on the banana, but I ate it. And she looks in the bag and she says, well, what did Mr. Custerman do? He says, you only got 3 bananas here. You know we always get 4 bananas. You go back to the store and find out why we only got 3. So I knew I ate it. So what I did is I took 5 cents of my own And I went to the store and I got another 5 cents worth of bananas, which was two
Two,
bananas.
right.
And I come back in and I give her to her, and she had run, I don't know, it must have been, well, she was still pretty good yet.
Mhm.
But she first found out that I'm the one that bought those. I never told her I did it.
But she thought the grocer tried to rip mom.
So I had to do something.
Sure. That's good.
Then there was another story about a nickel in church. Something about a nickel in church. You and mom one time just laughed, tears coming down your
I
eyes.
can't remember what they
About
were.
a nickel in church, I can't remember. If you found money, you had to put it in the church?
Oh, yeah, you had to put it, yeah, you had to. Oh, yeah. I can't remember though, that one. But like I said, we had good childhood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the time that she got on the table and danced too.
Yeah, and I wasn't used to that, and so I went.
Your
I
mother,
got
your
mad and I
grandma.
went in and I grabbed her around there and put her down on the floor.
I was playing the piano. I played by ear, you know. And so we were just being funny. So anyhow, she gets up on the table and starts dancing.
Mhm.
So while I'm playing that. Well, your grandpa didn't think it was so funny, I guess.
I'm not sure I ever heard that story.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even picture grandma doing that.
She did.
She did do
Mm-hmm.
kind of an Indian dance.
Oh, probably rained for 40 days and 40 nights then.
Well, yeah, we did that too when we went to camping
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
with Billingtons. Remember that one?
Billingtons.
Yeah, we went to an Indian where they had an Indian powwow. And, well, before that, you know, when we danced, you're her grandma and that, when we danced, Ruth and I, then it would rain. So we always said, because we're Indian, we had the power of the Indian rain
Wow.
dance. So this time we're up at this place there, and I'm walking along, he says, well, this is where they had their Indian powwow. And I was whipping my hip like that, and it started to rain. But I think the funniest was in the bathroom too. At the same time, we went to look for campgrounds. And the bathroom, we were,
Outside toilet, you mean?
no, this
No.
is an inside toilet, but they had, I mean, it was a big building, but they had the stalls were like an outdoor bathroom. So anyhow, we went in there and she's staying in there and she's staying in there and she's staying in there. Lorraine and I can't figure out why she was staying in there. She says, I don't know whether I went or if I didn't go.
I remember that.
Yeah,
The
we
wind was so
built it
bad.
so that the wind, the air would come up through the toilets like that.
Yeah.
Well, they
So-
built, yeah, so the smell would rise out through the
Yeah,
top.
yeah.
Well, there was a big draft like that. They'd even make you put the toilet seat down, the wind would blow so hard to make that toilet seat vibrate like that.
And she says, she didn't know whether she had a wind. She was so funny.
We laughed so hard.
The guys were trying to figure out what we were laughing at so bad.
Because they could hear you in their other part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought that was a story of mom crying after she got married. That somebody could hear her in the bathroom. She was complaining that she hadn't been pregnant yet.
Oh, yeah, she did. Yeah, that was the first month after they were married and she wasn't
Mhm.
pregnant. She really did, yeah.
Yeah.
She felt bad.
After that, sure, there was no stopping her.
Right.
And she always wanted twins.
Uh-huh.
I finally told her, you ain't gonna have any.
This is the end, huh?
Was that after Aunt Chrissy? Was that after Aunt Chrissy said no more twins, or?
But she did, she definitely did want twins.
Oh yeah, we know that.
Yeah. Janine finally did have them, but I don't even know if she realized it.
I don't
Why,
know.
she just kept, oh, mom, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna say yes, because knowing that mom knew more than what other people
That's what I
thought
always
she
said.
did.
Mhm.
Yes, that's very true.
And you know, I never did, I don't know, sure I told anybody else either when I did tell my story of when I had my thing with mom, and she cried when I showed her grandma and grandpa's picture. and that was in
2003.
2003. Well, I distinctly remember her having tears in her eyes one other time, and it was in 1999 at Aunt Martha's funeral. And I, for whatever reason, I took Mom to the back, and they were going to close the casket in the back, so I was with Mom. And I saw her, she was standing there with Aunt Martha's casket still open. She didn't say anything, she just had tears running down her eyes. So
She knew more than you thought
she knew.
Oh, you better believe. Because lots of times when I'd be at weddings or stuff like that, and the kid says, your sister Clarice is here, Aunt Clarice is here now. She'd grab a hold of my hand and squeeze it.
And you could see her eyes light up too.
Yeah. So she knew. That's what I always tell the kids. I says, don't say things negative in front of people that you think that don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Don't say it about
People
it
in
anyhow, but
comas
it-
and everything else too.
Right. So I think, well, like I said with Grandma, when the day before she died, Aunt Marge and I used to kind of go there together. Well, I went there, it was in the morning, and I went there and I fixed her hair because I always did Mom's hair. And my dad was real scared. He was real nervous. He thought she was going to die of starvation. She took sick on Saturday, and she hadn't eaten anything, and this was on Monday when we were there. And anyhow, then he says I think we better get something for Mother to eat. So Margaret made some oatmeal, and she made it real light so she could swallow it.
Running.
And she fed her, and I combed Ma's hair and got it all fixed up. And she turned to us and she said, thank you. In 2 years, I hadn't heard one word from my mother. And that was the day before she died. So she knew, even she knew at that time too. So,
That's good.
Now, she died in 61, right?
no, yeah, 61, yeah.
So she never knew Chris was even born.
No, Chris wasn't born at that
No,
time.
she was born in December of 61.
Oh, and Grandma died in January, didn't she?
Grandma died, yeah, the 31st of
And
January.
it was a whole, 10.
Then they had to send the social security check back.
I remember that. Yeah.
She lived, yeah, she died in the morning of 31, or the 31st.
31st.
And because she didn't live the whole day,
Month, right. All right, I understand, right. Mm-hmm.
the social security check went back.
And Grandpa always complained too that he had to pay taxes on their savings account even though he was,
No, he didn't.
how did that work?
He had to, because he had to pay on the
Inheritance tax
inheritance tax.
on her half of the property.
What he did was, every one of us except Margaret and Evelyn, we all borrowed money from my mom and dad when we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyhow, then when they found out that Mother was dying, then Dad had us make out because he knew we'd have to have the will, that's taken care of. So he had every one of us that borrowed money to sign a new note, because none of us ever paid interest or anything.
Right.
Nothing. And sometimes we paid what we had to pay off. Well, then the one that had, it was dated that date.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't old enough, so we didn't have to pay no interest on it. So he wasn't charged interest on that money, but then he just didn't feel it was fair, let's put it that way.
Sure.
So
Well, he'd
anyhow,
had to pay the,
he'd have paid,
he'd
he'd
had
have,
to
but
pay the
it,
tax on that.
but he wasn't that much money, he was just mad because they
Yeah.
didn't, because they thought when Dad wrote it down, he put sort of a percentage down that we were gonna be paying back, which we never even paid percentage.
Sure.
But anyhow, then, it was about a year or so later, then Dad decided then that he was gonna, it was a little after that. Well, it wasn't too much after that though. But anyhow, he decided that he was gonna cancel all these notes. So the one that owed the most, they got it completely off. The next one got whatever they got the cash for the difference in between.
Mm-hmm.
We all got a certain amount of money back, whatever we owed,
Right.
in that way. So it was all, we got the amount of money, all the same amount of money,
Sure.
but not in cash.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way he worked it with that.
That makes sense.
But I don't see, in my estimation, when the wife dies, that the husband should have to pay inheritance on something that already belongs to him. I can see the children having to because they're inheriting, but I don't think a husband and wife work to make it together.
Right.
He's not inheriting
I
that.
know, but that ain't the way.
He's maintaining it.
Plus, he was the main breadwinner. I don't know if Grandma earned any money.
Grandma didn't work out, but don't ever, you would have never, my aunt made the mistake.
I'm saying
Yeah.
what, she didn't work or something?
When she found out that my dad had to pay tax on that money, you know, inheritance tax, he says, why did you have to pay? Edna never worked a day in her life.
That'd be like saying my mom never worked.
That's right. And my dad, you didn't say a word about my mother to my dad. Nobody. You better not, nothing that even sounded like something.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what do you mean, Marie? He says, if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have nothing. We got all this and all this, and boy, she got the riot act. But I said, I knew what she meant.
Right.
Yeah.
But Dad was so touchy with that subject that,
Yeah, it,
he took care of my kids.
Have a cookie, guys. Have a cookie.
I did.
You want a cookie?
Yes.
I wanted to mention too, and I had this picture out, because I wanted to explain to Brian, but you guys are the ones who lived through it. Was this the day of my mom's last day of work? When she worked for whatever it was,
No,
Ulster's or
Hamilton Beach.
Hamilton Beach?
You and I are on that picture too.
Yeah. So what was it that women weren't allowed to work
Women weren't allowed to
After
work
they're
after they were
married.
married.
after they were married? That's what I told Brian it was.
Now, hang
And
on.
what was the reason?
Was that the law, or was that just like what kind of?
Their law.
That was a factory law.
Oh, okay.
Factories did that. They set that up amongst themselves, the
See, then during the war,
association.
then, well,
That,
I worked during the war in the war
Yeah.
plant.
Most of the women did work.
And,
That's when they did
yeah,
start
well,
working.
what I mean is
didn't
I
they?
wasn't married at that time, but anyhow, I worked, and I worked, I was a punch press operator.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. It was the best job I had, punch press. But anyhow, it was a man's job.
Mm-hmm.
So the war, on the 14th and 15th, you know, we were out of work. And the next day I went back, I had no job.
Really?
Because the men
Because it
came
was a
home, right?
man's job. And I didn't mind it because that was the way it was set up.
Yeah.
But the soldiers and that deserved that job back.
Coming back, right.
They deserved their time with work and
Yeah,
they had to
got
leave
drafted
it.
out of the job, so they should get it when they got back, you
Right.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, even nowadays, veterans are supposed to be guaranteed their jobs back
A
when they
lot of
come
them
back.
don't get them back.
I
though.
know, there's ways around it, but I know when I worked for UPS as a student worker, when I was going to school at Racine Technical Institute, and then I went in service, I was guaranteed that job back again if I went back to school, in which I enrolled right away, and I got my job back again. And whoever, one of the other persons who had worked there had to leave UPS
Yeah.
for that student crew.
I bumped a guy when I come back too. He didn't lose his job, but he lost a position that he had. And he was highly insulted. He, when I come back, why, I was working for the roofing company with her dad. And I come back and he, boss Langley says, well, he said, your old job is waiting for you. And I was a truck driver at the time, delivering shingle and working on roofs and whatever. And this other guy was doing that too. And he told him, he says, well, you're down to labor now. And he got highly insulted. He says, well, why does he get that job? Well, he told him, he says, that is the rule. He's anybody that leaves a job and gets drafted into service, and when they come back, they're supposed to be guaranteed the job they had, if they want it. If they don't want it, then it's a different story.
So were you drafted to go back, to
Huh?
go in the military, or did you join?
No, I was drafted.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was drafted.
Okay, and you went not in the regular army, but the Army Air Corps, or which one?
Well, I was drafted into the Army, but they were, they needed personnel all over. Like, they needed personnel in the Air Corps, they needed them in the infantry, and different branches. Well, when they got ready to do that, they kinda took your, IQ off of your high school diploma, and they went by that to place you in job descriptions. So my IQ was pretty high, so they put me in the Air Corps. Well, as it was, when you got into there, you didn't know exactly what position you were gonna get either. But I was lucky enough to go into the ground, what they call the ground crew. We were strictly on the ground, we never flew. Some of the guys got to be gunners if they wanted to. And a lot of guys wanted that job, but I never got offered that job until I was overseas. And they wanted me to be a tail gunner then, because I was small and fitting the tail of a 17. You were back there like a sitting duck, all by yourself. The rest of everybody, you had a gun back there and you were what they call a tail gunner. Anything coming in your path in the back was yours. And a lot of guys didn't make it, because then fighters would come in and they'd start on the back end and work their way up.
That's true.
You wanna go back in there and I'll clean this up?
We can stay right here if they want to,
I don't care.
if that's okay with them.
I had a question about this photo. So this was on my mom's last day of work, or was it just for lunch break?
I think that was a lunch break.
Okay, so
That's by,
wasn't this over
Yes.
on,
Very good,
what's
thank
now
you.
Memorial Drive?
that's on, was that Hamilton Beach? Yes.
So, this parking lot behind there, which direction is it facing? Was Horlick Field built at that time? Is that where
Yes.
Horlick Field would be?
Oh, Horlick Field was there a long time.
Let's say that this is
Or
the
the street.
sidewalk, that's High Street, and the cars are parked to the north of High Street.
Oh, the northwest
No,
side.
that street is, there, runs on Memorial Drive, because Hamilton Beach had a parking lot inside
Yeah,
of that
that's
fence.
right.
They had, this was a parking lot back, this was on, facing, Memorial Drive. See, a lot of them buildings that are there now weren't there during the war.
Oh,
See, that building on the west or on the south side, that's up against the fence on High Street, that wasn't there at that
south
time.
side or north side?
Huh?
I thought there's a building on the north side.
Yeah, but that's way over. That's off of
That's way
Rapids
over.
Drive.
So what I would call, what you called Standard Foundry, is that part of that?
No,
That went all the way from High
That
Street
was,
south?
Standard Foundry was up this way farther on Memorial
If
Drive.
you could take this and stand here and look this way, you would see Bell City.
Rapids Drive.
Yeah,
That would be Rapids Drive that way.
so
This way was
the
up,
Standard Foundry would be down there.
yeah, be over
You're on
here.
the same side that Horlick Field is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Standard
Horlick
Foundry
Field
was
there as
just,
long as I can
Okay, so
remember.
where is Horlick
you know,
Field from that picture?
Horlick Field would be, a block up and across the
Oh,
street.
block, okay. I thought it would have been within sight.
No, across the street is that parking lot, the big parking lot now
yeah,
on Memorial Drive.
right, yeah.
But Hamilton Beach had their own parking lot behind that fence.
Okay.
On the west side of the,
So that's facing, which direction? I wanna write it
Facing
back.
west.
That's
West.
facing west.
Yeah.
See, that's why I thought there was a parking lot across from Horlick Field when I saw that.
There is
parking
one.
lot.
There is one right now.
not.
Yes, there is. That's
not
what I
from
thought
Horlick
that
Field.
was.
Horlick Field is, then there's a parking lot to the north.
To the north,
High
that's what I
Street,
thought that was.
Well, the north, yeah. But
North
it's
of
still
High
across
Street.
from Horlick Field.
Yeah, but it's north of Horlick on High Street. It's
Oh,
not in Memorial.
Yeah.
It's north of Memorial.
Well, you thought it was south?
I thought it was north, I thought that parking lot was north of Horlick Field, and this would be facing
This
that parking
here
lot.
would be facing the
Mhm.
parking lot that's there now.
Take it all down, because they need to be down.
Just a little bit, I wanna take them down.
Well, we can have it all down
Because
because
this here,
that, I set it up when we had our Christmas stuff up there.
Oh, sure.
they had,
Look at these are antiques.
there was no parking lot, there was houses across the street.
Oh, yeah, where that big parking lot is?
Where their parking lot is now, there was houses in there. On the north of Horlick Field.
Oh.
And this was looking probably a lunch
That's
break.
fine, that's fine, I'm glad you
Because,
did, I was gonna do it, so now that he's there doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, that,
This had to be before May 9th, so.
Yeah, it was before
Yeah.
that, because she
yeah.
couldn't work
Want
after
that light?
midnight.
Is that the light switch
I was
over there?
No, it's fine, it's
About it.
perfect.
For
Yeah,
what?
but we
There was
can't
nothing
see.
you could do about it.
Hmm?
He can, I can think he can see it. Right
Because
behind
He
otherwise
can
there's
see,
a
I'm
light.
looking.
First one.
Perfect.
No, there was another paper out here, and I want you to, well, you know what, I was gonna get my paper, because I wanted to have you tell me, and I wanted to get it in chronological order, where Grandma and Grandpa were married. They were married up in Kimberly, right?
Right, no, yeah,
And then Uncle Joe, was he the only one that was born up?
he was, no. Then they moved to Wrightstown after they were married. They got married in Kimberly, because that's where Grandma lived, was in Kimberly. And my grandparents lived in Kimberly.
Let me just, I wanted to write that down, as long as I asked the question, and I'm leading up to a photograph. Oh, it's in my pocket, that's why.
Now's the time to ask all these questions.
Oh.
That's right, I mean.
This actually is Brian's project, but this is what I started when I brought those photos over.
Okay.
And this is my Verbeten side. So they were married at Kimberly,
Yeah,
and it was at November?
November 22nd, 1910.
Okay, then they moved to where?
Then they moved to Wrightstown.
Which
Yeah.
is where, basically, is where the
Northwest,
Verbetens
that's-
were from,
Thanks.
Mhm. Right.
right?
Well,
Okay,
actually, basically, the Verbetens are from Holland.
well, I know, but
Oh.
Wrightstown is where Grandpa was born, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do they go from Wrightstown?
Then from Wrightstown, they went to Kimberly.
Dad, I am recording this, you don't have to write it down.
Well, I'm still, yes.
They went to Kimberly. Well, Joe was born at Wrightstown.
Oh, all right, Joe born there, okay.
And Evelyn, Aunt Evelyn was born in Wrightstown.
And Evelyn, okay.
Then Margaret, Aunt Marge, was the first one born here in Racine. From there on in, we were all born in Racine.
And I know that, okay, so, but your dad and your mom were living in two different places. I think your dad came down here to find work first.
Yes, and he lived with Mr. Blighter, Mr. and Mrs. Blighter at that time. No, not, yeah, at that time he did, yeah.
Because I've seen postcards.
I thought he went to, lived in Texas or someplace.
My dad, I don't even know if he ever
Oh.
was in Texas.
You didn't even know how to spell it.
Don't
So John moved
underestimate
to
your
Racine
grandpa.
and Edna lived where?
The first place they lived,
No, when they were separated.
my dad lived with Mr. and Mrs. Blighter.
That's right. Blydorn, B-L-E-I.
I don't know how to spell it. I told you I'm the worst word spell.
Okay, so,
And then, that was the two, and then they moved down in 1914, because that's where Aunt Marge was born, right by Horlick's, used to be Horlick's, the owners of Horlick's.
Trying to think of that
Estate.
street, what the hell is it? Mound or, Mount Pleasant, and then the next one over,
Hampton.
I can't think of it either, it's funny.
offhand, but anyway, that,
But there was
the
at
next
the,
thing, it was on the north of Rapids Drive, the second house down on the west
The
side
big
of the
house.
street.
and DeFreeze, Mrs. DeFreeze, well, the mother of them, the DeFreezes, is the one, I didn't know it until I moved into Kramer Edition and she was living with her daughter. Well, anyhow, she was talking to me and she found out I was Verbeten. And she says, she asked which one, and she says, do you know? She says, I helped them deliver your sister Margaret.
oh,
because my mother and dad lived upstairs and they lived downstairs.
Mhm.
So they delivered. Wow. Then they moved, after that, then they moved to Michigan Boulevard.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they lived by Michigan. As a matter of fact, I just had something that I was reading about it.
Yeah, what the heck
I
was
had,
that?
Dad got a card or something,
Yeah.
in the mail or something.
So when would
And
that have been, you think? Before Aunt Joyce was born then?
No, yeah, because Aunt Joyce was born on 300 English Street.
Oh,
And your mother was the last one that was delivered at home. I was the first one in the hospital. I was born in the hospital.
Did midwives come then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. And they had doctors too, that came, you know.
And see, her dad worked for the gas company
To begin
when they
with.
first came to the scene.
Mhm.
That's where he lost part of his toe.
well, the reason why I asked about the chronological order was because of Uncle Joe. So, I just found this picture, it's pieced together,
Mhm.
and it's not even all there. So what it says here on the back, in someone's writing, it says Joseph Verbeten, very clearly.
Mhm.
Mona, S-A-U, something or another.
Now that's a friend. That was a friend.
So would that be up at
And that'd be in Kimberly.
Kimberly?
Mhm.
Okay,
That was
that's
Kimberly.
where this whole story was going to.
That's Kimberly.
I'm not sure I tried to I scanned this in, I tried to do something with this photo, but you think that does look like your brother Joe, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's definitely Uncle Joe.
Mhm.
So this is,
I can't think of, I should even know that lady's last name.
Joe
Stoddard or
Warren.
Stoddard something. Started with an S.
It's a S, it looks like S-O-U, and then it looks almost like there's a cross, the blue ink is like a T, it would be a cross T if there's another part of that.
Yeah,
Could be
well,
Sutherland or something, South or Sutherland or something.
Well, Sodders or, I think I don't know. But it sounded like the name that they always talked about with him.
Okay, so that would be around 19, I don't know when that would be.
And that's your godfather, Uncle Joe, right?
Yes, okay. So that does begin
He
with
was the
that.
first grandchild of the Lynches, my grandma and grandmas.
Oh,
Yeah, mother had the first 3 kids. Because mother got married, well, not the youngest maybe, but yeah, she must have been the youngest. My Aunt Sadie was in her late 20s or 30s when she got married.
Which was late back then.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of funny because the jewelry, you know, where we got all the jewelry in town here when you guys came and upstairs in that place?
Yeah, Vincent's
Vincent's,
jewelry.
yeah. Well, his wife is from Kimberly,
Oh,
and we were talking about that I had relatives there, and she says, Sadie Lynch? I says, yeah. She says, she was my sponsor for confirmation. I mean, that's,
The world gets smaller
Yeah.
every day.
and she says, but my aunt was, well, what should I say, who she's like? She was kind of a social person, and she dressed like it, and she was definitely a social type person. But they used to call her the Queen of Kimberly.
Oh.
Everybody called her the Queen of Kimberly because she was such an aristocrat. She worked in the post office there at that time.
Aunt Martha?
No,
Oh.
Aunt Sadie.
Oh,
Aunt Sadie.
okay, that was the whole thing. I didn't want to get you too far off track, but that took us about 10 minutes off track.
That's fine. I think I want to sit over here. Okay.
Over here?
No, we're good right there.
Because otherwise, if you ask some questions, oh,
That's
right there,
perfect,
okay, that
right
makes sense.
Okay. We don't really want to take up too much more of your time, even though I can tell that you're, what I think, enjoying this at least. I hope so.
okay, we're ready, teacher.
See, I can even answer questions when I'm in school now.
That's good. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about World War II, and not just World War II and all of some of the events that took place, because there were a lot of events that actually led up to that. So I want to know if you guys remember some of those. So for example, you know, the United States was in the Great Depression, and a lot of people feel that although the New Deal was good for people to try to get jobs and everything, it was actually everyone going back to work because of World War II that had kind of pulled us out of the Great Depression. So that's what I want to kind of get there. But, you know, do you guys have any recollection in the late 30s of Germany's leader Adolf Hitler and invading other countries? Do you remember getting news of that
Oh,
sort of
yes,
thing?
there was a lot of news of that,
Okay.
yeah.
And you heard about that on the radio or in the newspaper?
We heard it in the radio, on the radio, but that's the only kind of,
Sure.
that
Mhm.
kind, and then in the newspapers you heard about it.
Okay.
Yeah, when they went into Poland and when they went into all these different countries as they went along.
Sure.
And then we also heard at that time Russia was in with them.
Yeah, and they were. They had kind of signed an agreement not to mess around with each other at that
But then when
point.
they found out United States was winning it, then they came over to our side.
Sure. So, and you know, this is a kind of a tough question. Well, maybe we'll go to Grandpa or Uncle Ron here. Do you, when the United States, we were neutral at first, you know?
Right.
Did you think the United States should lend a hand? Because after France fell, it was only Great Britain that stood in.
Well, what they did then, before we went into
Mhm.
war and that, what they did is they sent money and supplies and different
Monies,
things
right.
over there.
Mhm.
They helped them in that way, but they didn't help them the other way.
Sure. Okay, now here's a question. We're going to go all the way around. Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when you found out that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor?
It's pretty
We were all at
famous.
the same place.
Oh, were you really? You were all at the same. Okay, well, Uncle Ron, where were you at the time?
Theater,
You were in the theater.
yeah.
Main Street Theater.
Yep, we had went to the show and they broke in on in the movie, the news flash. It came on the screen.
And then they came out and they said it too, they
Yeah.
stopped it, yeah.
And
They stopped the movie.
they stopped everything, come out on the stage and announced it.
So what time of day was that? If you
This was the
remember? Morning,
afternoon.
Afternoon. So it was
Yeah.
still the morning of Pearl Harbor attack.
Mhm.
Right,
Because it was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning there.
Right.
yeah.
So you had heard fairly quickly then.
We heard it as soon as anybody else in town heard it, I
Yeah,
think.
Mhm.
right.
You know, unless they heard
It
other.
was
Now-
a news, went over the
Was a
national
bulletin.
network. Really,
Sure.
really.
So was it as shocking as, say, the assassination of President Kennedy? I mean, how did people react?
Well, I think
Openly
it
or
was
pretty
bad,
openly?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it.
It hit.
Yeah.
Did you guys know what that meant? Did you know that we would probably be then officially
Oh, yeah.
declaring war?
Well, yeah, it was the next day when President Roosevelt,
Mhm.
Declared war, and then they had, they started immediately right after that, regular draft.
Mhm.
Before that, it was enlistment, but right after
No.
the war,
didn't they draft before? Didn't John get drafted? Or
Yeah.
did he enlist?
well, they pushed the draft after that.
Oh, okay.
You
yeah.
you were drafted, could be drafted through enlistment before that,
Oh, okay.
but then it was a volunteer deal. But after the war, then it wasn't a volunteer deal no more.
See, it was for 2 years when they first, before the war started.
Mhm.
It was 2 years that they were in, under that draft.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how where our friends went when they got in the, like John, he went on a ship, he was going to get off at Northern Africa, whatever that was. And it was a terrible storm. And the head guy says, now when that boat comes up, you just jump in it. John jumped and got his leg over the side and it got smashed against the
Was that where he got hurt?
big ship, yeah,
Oh, I know he got hurt. I didn't know how.
yeah.
You know, my cousin Mark has gone to the archives, military archives, and he's emailing me all these letters and everything,
Mhm.
newspaper articles that I've been looking for of that,
Mhm.
and the letters saying that Uncle John was awarded the Purple Heart
Mhm.
for that incident.
See, now I didn't know that.
And the telegrams came through Casablanca.
Yeah, how
Isn't
about
that,
that?
isn't that the top of
Casablanca?
Africa?
And Bamaica.
It's in Morocco.
Morocco, that's what I
Okay.
thought. Okay.
Okay, so now, you know, on that day, you said, well, we knew that we were probably gonna enter the war. Would you say Americans at that time were very sad? Were they angry at the Japanese? Were they?
Oh, I think we were angry at the Japanese.
Oh, yeah, that,
I mean, the amount of people and the way they got, you know, that somebody dare do that to us.
Yeah.
You know, really. Because that's the first time that anybody ever did
a
anything.
lot of people that
On
got
US
killed.
soil.
And yes,
Kinda like what happened in
yeah, it was that was something trauma, big trauma when they,
Mhm.
you know.
Although Hawaii wasn't a state yet.
No, it was not a state, but we had our.
No, but we owed it, we.
Yeah, it was our property.
country.
Our property, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, my students have difficulty understanding what Pearl Harbor meant, and obviously I've studied it, so I get it. And I try to show them videos and pictures and newsreels, things of that nature. But the way I best compare it is by using September 11th, because for them, they were in the 3rd and 4th grade, and they kind of remember that.
Yeah.
So that was that was 9 years ago now, almost
Oh.
9 years ago. When that happened, or did the Kennedy assassination, did that kind of bring back some of those memories of Pearl Harbor, like we're being attacked again?
Oh, yeah.
Did that kind of remind you of what it was like?
Yeah, it was a very sad, you know,
Mhm.
you didn't know what.
Mm-hmm.
You felt something and you just didn't know how to really explain it like I don't right now.
Sure, I
You know.
understand. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay.
You're scared, you're angry.
Yeah, I think angry was one of the big things that you
Mhm.
were. And then when you found out, you know, like after Pearl Harbor, like even the doctors that brought the first kids, Dr. Hogan was your mother's doctor at that time when the kids were born. Your kids, well, until he gave up practice and then they went to Jameson. But anyhow, then one of his sons got killed there.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of his sons got killed there.
He was at Pearl Harbor and he died there.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. So and then when you know people, see now like even like with the war part of it, my best girlfriend, she was engaged and her fiance got killed at Saipan.
Yeah.
Really?
So I'm sure each of you knew somebody that was killed in the war.
Yeah. Our family though, in general, for both sides of the family, nobody got killed. And there were a lot of Verbetens and there were a lot of lynches that
Which
was
is
in the war from my side of the family I'm
Mhm.
talking about. His cousin was,
a prisoner of war.
Really?
Yeah, he was prisoner of war for 10 months.
Where was he captured?
Yeah, he was
Where was he in
in Germany.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was. He tells about it that he was a hero. He said to hell, he says, ain't nobody gonna take me.
Hmm.
Well, they got up in the area where they couldn't get out, and that was it. I mean, they got captured, and they were in prison, German prison camp for 9 or 10 months. He came out of there. He was a man of about, I'd say about 170 pounds, and when he got out of there, he weighed less than 90.
Wow.
yeah, and the thing of it is, we were married now on the 17th of November. When he got out of service, he got out in October,
Mhm.
and we got married in November.
Mhm.
So it was getting married fast. But anyhow, we went to his grandma and grandpa Gall's place, which is up at Turtle Lake.
Mhm.
And anyhow, then they had said that he had just come home.
Yeah, he had just got
He
out
had
of
just come home.
discharged.
How'd he get out of the concentration camp?
Well, the war was over.
Oh,
The
oh,
war
oh.
was
They
over,
liberated.
because that's when we got married after the war was over.
But there's still people they've never found.
But
Oh,
he,
yeah, there's a lot of them that they
he
never
anyhow,
will.
he came, we didn't meet him, we never saw him.
Did
So we
this,
come back from there,
Clarence, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, Robarch?
Robarch,
Yeah.
did he ever go into service?
Oh, he enlisted. He was in the Marines.
Oh.
He enlisted in 39 in the Marines. And he was,
I thought he moved down and lived in Chicago.
no, not him, no.
The sister did.
His
was-
sister moved down
Oh.
to Chicago. But Clarence was,
Elizabeth.
Yeah,
yeah,
Elizabeth
yeah.
did.
he enlisted in the Marines, and then he was, I don't remember where he went, for sure. But then he came back, and then he was lucky enough that he got a permanent position out in California in one of the Marine bases out there. And he got to be what they call a postmaster, run the post office.
So now, Uncle Ron, you mentioned that you were drafted. What year were you drafted in, and how did the government let you know that you
Sure.
decided to serve?
Sent you an invitation, Christmas card, what mine was.
Now, and you know,
I mean, I
beyond
got mine in December, and first part of December, and I went and took my physical before Christmas, and then I was told that I would be called sometime after the first of the year. So I was called to go in the 1st of February.
and then you can be honest. It doesn't matter to me. Were you upset that you got drafted? What were your feelings? Were you kind of excited, or did you just kind of know it was something I had to do? Or
I think you had mixed emotions about it, because you're going to be drafted. You don't know where you're going.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just a notice that you had to report for duty at a certain time, and we had to go to Fort Sheridan down here. And from there, you sat there and went through all these tests. You had to get all your shots. Every day they were poking you with them dull needles or railroad spikes in the arm, and then you had to go through what do you call it? Exams. I mean, they had different exams you had to take for your IQ and different things, and what you did, how you graduated out of school, and
Almost like placement tests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was a
And,
first.
So they can tell you where to put you.
then then my IQ, they went by the IQ. Well, they were looking for people in the Air Corps at that time. The Air Corps was pretty low on personnel. So then they were looking for Air Corps people, so that's how come I got drafted into the Air Corps. Well, after we got there, then we still didn't know what we were going to be, because then they ship you out to basic for 13 weeks. I went to Florida, from 20 below zero to 90 in Florida. With your winter OD clothes on, you got off that stupid train. You had your OD, you had long johns on, you had your OD's uniform on, and you had an OD Army
Coat.
overcoat. You got out in 90-degree weather. Oh,
Olive drab.
Oh, yeah.
you
Right.
just kept dropping it on the ground. It was your
Nah.
duffel bag.
obviously he had to tell you that he was drafted. How did you feel at that point in time?
Well, I felt very let down.
Mhm.
In the first place, we both were, well, I was old enough to get married
Mhm.
at that time, but you had to be 21 for the man. Woman could be 18,
Mhm.
the lady. But his mother and dad wouldn't sign for us.
No.
So we had to wait through the whole war, so, before we could get married. And that bothered me, but it bothered me because he was in the Air Corps and I figured he was gonna be on an airplane.
Mhm.
And that, I cried, I think, for 2-3 days because he was in the Air Corps. I found out afterwards he had a better job than the guys on the ground,
Mhm.
had. But at that time, I was very upset.
I was-
And I don't know, Bill, do you remember when we took Ron to the depot?
No.
You don't remember?
Shit.
Well, good
He was
thing.
probably hungover.
20 below zero that morning, standing at the depot waiting to get on the
You were
train.
with you and his dad and I. They lived on Peck Avenue
Oh,
at that
I
time.
don't quite remember that.
Yeah, when you went there, you were with, but his dad had to pull me and he had to shove me away because I wouldn't let go of him.
So when you said his parents wouldn't sign,
Yeah.
do you think their wishes were that they didn't know if he was gonna come back, so maybe they felt you shouldn't get married unless?
Well, see, I think one of the things might have been is that his dad was in World War
Oh, okay.
I, and they never got married, but she never stated the fact how young she was either.
Huh?
So, he must have been about 15 or 16 at the time, because she got married at 18.
Got married at 18.
She got married at 18 and he went through, well, that war was not as long as the other one.
Our involvement was not
No.
as long, right?
No.
But even at
But
that,
he was in the front lines.
Sure.
Yeah, he was in the front lines.
so.
He went through France and Germany when he was there.
And something that the kids would be interested in is, you didn't pick up the phone and call Aunt Clarice
Mm-hmm.
when he had a free 5 minutes. You had to write letters, there was no,
Right.
you.
And even what is interesting about when he was overseas, how secretive, everything is out in the open. TV, they got everything before it happens. What they're gonna use, what they're not gonna use and stuff. Well, this, everything there was secretive. And when he wrote to me when he was in England, sometimes I'd get a letter back and it was either blacked out or cut out of the letter.
Really?
The stuff was that they didn't want
They went through it.
out. See, they had an officer, what they call the adjutant general, in each unit, and his job was to censor all mail going out. That was his job, and he'd sit there and he'd either take a magic marker and mark it off, or take a razor blade and cut it out.
So I get
Letters
letters
come
like
in
that.
what she got had holes in them, because they'd cut out, if you said something that they thought was
Huh?
giving the secret away or something,
And
they
it-
cut
You
it
didn't
out.
save any of those by any chance, did you?
No, I should have.
Yeah?
I should have. And then when you wanted anything, if they wanted, like say, I wanted to send some cookies and stuff to them, you know, like they all did. I had to get a letter from him stating that would I send them some cookies, would I send them this? Everything otherwise, and I had to bring that to the post office, and they had to check that out to make sure that he had asked for that.
No, Grandpa, I know that you did not serve in World War II. Did you, were you ever drafted and it didn't work out, or did you enlist?
No, I went to Milwaukee 2 times that I remember, and every time that I went, they sent me back to Racine. What was that called? F.
Well,
You were
for,
working in a plant where
you were
Yeah.
for F. You were just
where they couldn't get the help. He was in the foundry at that time, and foundry help.
See,
You didn't
Yeah,
get that
that
much.
was.
the factories had priority to
Yeah.
a point of the workers.
But
People that didn't, they couldn't replace these people in that particular factory, and they'd get.
Was it working? It was because of his work.
Yeah,
that he
they-
got-
you,
What the hell did they call
No,
it?
this
Well,
was
F4 is
before
a 4F.
we got married.
Yeah,
But Ruthie came right out and said, if you go off to war, we're not getting married.
I know. I heard that too. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
From the horse's mouth.
From the
From the
horse's
horse's mouth,
Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
So what, then, on a personal level, I thought, Dad, you had problems with your teeth, and that's why you couldn't go in the CCs, or you couldn't go in the military or something? That part of the story.
I don't know.
You got your
Did you get your teeth
you
fixed
got your
there?
teeth when you went.
Oh,
to
yes,
sea.
yes. I couldn't go into the CCs because I had rotten teeth.
Mhm.
And there was a dentist in West Merrill,
Yeah.
was in Merrill on the west side. And he made up a top plate for me, and all that going back and forth and there and everything only cost me $25.
Wow.
You can't even get into the office without
Right.
that.
Anyway, that's all that was.
Well, okay, now speaking of foundries and factories and stuff, pretty much after Pearl Harbor, even a little before, we really kind of picked up our switching production from consumer goods to wartime goods. Do you remember or have any recollection of people returning to work on all kinds of things? You had mentioned that you worked in a factory during
Right.
the war. Now, what did you make? What was your job there?
We were making, they were parts for the,
You were making housing for aircraft
yeah, I was,
fans and
yeah.
in the aircraft. They
But
had
then
little
when
bitty
But when
fans about this size in the aircraft for like the windshield and for the navigators, and the the bombardiers, they had them on their little thing there that,
And when I worked at Webster Electric, I was on the punch press
Yeah.
then. Then I was making all different parts.
that was,
Whatever they needed for, they were making teletext and tox and all that kind of stuff at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was doing in there.
see, Hamilton Beach was strictly electronics at one time during the war.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, they were making appliances,
No,
like,
I think-
So they went from making appliances and they switched to some sort of
And-
electronic equipment.
see, your grandma, during the beginning, she went up and worked in electronics where they were, all these little motors had a housing and armature in there, and she was working on those, cleaning those and that. And then they had assembly department in there that was strictly a highly dust-proof building. I mean, you had a room. If you went in there, you had to get blowed down and put on a certain uniform or whatever to get in there to work or even to clean up in there.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you come out, you had to, that had to go again. You had to, that went into the laundry again.
Wow.
Yeah.
But like American Motor made Jeeps for the war,
Yeah.
and I had heard Jockey made parachutes for the war,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so.
Rainfair made
Every-
rain clothes for the Navy.
Mhm.
All the stuff, yeah, all the factories here in town were making things for the war, and we had a
Yeah.
lot of factories in this town.
We had quite a few foundries.
Oh, yeah, you
Oh,
had,
yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
had,
But Standard Foundry, during the war, they made this big housing that was about that long, quite round. It was the housing for all the gears for the tanks.
Yeah,
yeah.
right,
Remember that?
yeah.
And it made me kind of mad. You know, we're supposed to inspect them. And if you think there's a little crack, you're supposed to take your brush and dip it in gas and put it on there. And then if it was all the way through, it would come through. See?
Yeah,
I says, here's one I just mentioned it, and the boss says, we ain't throwing nothing out, we'll take it back there and get it welded. And I thought that was kind of rotten.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was gonna say before is, when the war was over and these men were starting to come back to the foundries, there was a guy that he started back, and at noon, the siren went off for dinner, for noon, and he went nuts,
Hmm. Yeah,
and they had to leave him go.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that, a
Remember
lot of
that.
guys came back with a lot of problems.
And what do they
Well,
You
call
were
see.
fortunate that it
Call it
didn't.
shell shock now.
Or
see,
post-traumatic.
like when
right.
you were England at that time, Germany was sending what they called a buzz bomb.
Mm-hmm.
It was pilotless or anything. It was just a huge,
It was basically a rocket.
like a rocket,
Mm-hmm.
and it was controlled to a point. They were sending them over into England. They were bombing England with them things from over the
France.
channel.
Right.
And you never knew when the hell one of them was going to come in.
So
We had them hit. We got hit twice with them things while on our base.
really,
Yeah, we had one. Well, we'll say this is our bomb area like this, and it's all divided up into different segments for different bombs. I mean, you had your fire bombs, your shrapnel bombs, and all down the line. Well, one dropped right in the end of the revetment for all the bombs one night.
wow.
Didn't blow
Just
up
blew
anything
the,
else.
well, it blew the dirt into the revetment. It didn't do anything to the revetment area where the bombs were, but just took and blew all the dirt in there.
Lucky, in other words, it could have been closer.
And then we had one, about 4 o'clock in the morning, we had a takeoff at 5. I don't remember where they were going, but we had a takeoff at 5, and they sent one in and dropped it. They meant it for the runway, but they dropped it right alongside the runway.
So they just missed.
Big a mess. We had to go out there with shovels and clean that up before the planes could even take off.
Now, what years were you in England from?
I was in from 42 to 45.
Oh, really? No.
I went in February 1st in 1942,
No, 43,
or 43 rather, yeah.
43.
Okay, so what was your job when you were in England? What were your main?
Loading bombs on the aircraft.
And were those the B-25 bombers or what?
Oh, they started at 2,000 pounders and went down to 250 pounders.
Hmm.
We had a few 100 pounders that was a fragmentation bomb that they used to try to get into personnel with them.
Sure.
If they could find a large group of personnel in there, Germans or whatever, that they'd drop them in amongst them because those things were, about so round like that, and they were about this long, and it was an all a spring coil deal. And when that blew out, that little pieces like this would come out. That's where you got hit with shrapnel on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
if you were any near.
Well, you know, when he was in it, they had a write-up of him in the paper one time. And we got our paper at that time in the afternoon, you know. So Aunt Marge got her paper before we got ours. And she picked up the paper and she looked at it and she saw his picture in there and she just read part of the heading of it.
Oh, no.
And on there, it said that he was working on deadly bombs, but she only seen the dead. She called up Grandma and she says, did Clarice hear anything about Ron or anything? Did she get any news about them? Because she thought that he had gotten killed, because the picture was of him and it mentioned the bombs. But the bombs he was sitting on was big. They were
You know,
big bombs.
2,000 pounders.
So were they ready to roll? When you loaded them, did you have to be careful not to bump them and things? They were
No, yeah, they were.
ready to blow.
Well, no, they weren't ready to blow because on the end of the bomb, there was an opening in there, about this big around on each end. And one end, the bomb was in a kind of a cone shape, and there was a fuse that went in there that got screwed in there, and it had a little propeller on it. And the same thing on the back where the fins were, there was another opening and they screwed it in. And then when you loaded it in a plane, after you got it up in the bomb rack, then there was what they call an arming wire that was hooked up on the rack, and it was like a copper wire. And you had to go down and thread that through that little fan that was in there, and on both ends. And then when that bomb was released, that wire came out, and then these propellers would turn and detonate the bomb. And when it landed, it would blow.
Mm-hmm.
But they had these little propellers on there that turned. There was like a little wire that held the arming pin in. And when that went off, when that twisted off, then that thing, any impact, then it would blow.
Well, he had one that landed on his arms. He had a hold up.
One night, while I was inspector, while I was boss, you might as well say, big deal. I was a sergeant in charge of loading, and I had 16 guys out there loading bombs at night. And that was another thing. You never knew. You get your call at night at 11 o'clock that there was a bomb load to go out. The planes were going to take off at 3 o'clock or whenever. And you went out there. You didn't know what you were going to load till you got out to the line. Then they'd hand you this sheet, how many planes you had to load and what you had to put on them. Well, this particular night, we had 500-pound jobs to put on. And guys went in, done their job, and when they get done with a plane, I would go back and check to make sure that all the arming wires were in place. Well, when I reached in to check that arming wire coming off of the rack, the damn bomb on the top left go off of the rack and fell on my arm. I had my watch on. I was like this in there, standing there waiting for the guys to come and pick up the bomb. They had to come back till one of the guys came back and he says, "What the hell are you doing in there?" He says, "You done yet?" I said, "No, I can't get out." And he said, "Why?" "Oh," I said, "I got my arm stuck in between these two bombs." So they had to go back and get the sling in the harness and pick this thing up so I could get my arm out of there and put it back on the rack. Well, I wore the impact, didn't break nothing, but I wore the impact of that watch for at least a month in my arm.
Wow.
You don't think that didn't hurt for a
I
while?
bet.
500-pound bomb on your arm.
500 pounders.
And one false move and it could have blown. If you
No.
would have disturbed that thing, no?
Well, no, it would have, see, the impact would have had to been completely out of there.
Oh.
See, they wouldn't,
They didn't arm the bombs on base so they wouldn't blow up their own guys, right?
they wouldn't blow until they were dropped out and hit something solid to blow.
Right.
And then they had what they called a magnesium bomb. That was made out of coffee cans. It was about this big around, about as long as this table. And that was armed with the same fuses, but that was what that was, a magnesium. That was a firebomb. When they dropped that, that just blew all over the place and burned anything in sight.
Wow. Now, Grandpa, did you think that, like, how did you get your information in the United States about what was going on in, let's say, England or Germany or even in the Pacific Ocean? How did you find out about the war?
Well, I heard it. Heard it first from their dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it was a Sunday morning. Yeah, we went out on Saturday night. Well, anyway, that's when,
Oh, I understand. But,
and,
but while, let's say, when Ron was away, you know, did you read the newspaper? Did you listen to the radio? How did you find out about what was going on overseas?
I don't know, just, he kept on working and at the foundry and I, for a long time, I didn't even know where Uncle Ron was,
Right.
where he was stationed even. Just like when Uncle Walt, I found out that he was over making airplanes, what do you call them, strips?
Landing strips,
On
yeah.
landing strips on one of the islands.
Yeah.
I didn't know where he was. And afterwards, he said the worst doggone state that I was in during my training was Mississippi. You
Yeah,
could drive for miles and there was no tree.
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now, and Clarice, were you kind of worried during that time? Like, did you always read the newspaper and listen to the radio?
Oh, yeah, I listened and I read, but then when I get a letter from him or something, then I would feel, well, I got letters practically every day, but sometimes you get maybe 3-4 letters in a day too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes they didn't all come, and he said the same thing when I would send them. He
Okay.
wrote to me every day, and I wrote to him.
Now,
every
this
day.
might be tough to remember, but you know, if you wrote a letter to him on, let's say, June 1st, how long do you think it would take for you to actually get the letter?
Well,
Was it?
probably 6 to 10 days.
Oh, okay, that's not.
And they
that's
were
not terrible.
airmail.
Oh,
That
really?
was supposed to be airmail.
Yeah, but the airmail only was here in the United States,
That's
right?
all it was.
Yeah.
The
And
rest
they
were on
would,
ships.
once in a great while, if they had officials from the United States going to one of these, like England and that, then they would shove mail on that plane
Mm-hmm.
in the baggage compartment to go over there.
Sure.
Other than that, it would come by boat.
Right. Okay, so you were actually in England for the D-Day invasion. Do you remember, which would have been June of 1944? Do you remember something big going down? Did the guys kind of know that? Because you know when they planned D-Day, if this is England, there were bases all from all over that country that were sending 20 ships, 50 ships, planes. Do you remember something big happening during that time that you knew something was going to go
Oh
down?
yeah.
Did they tell you that was going to happen, or did they just assume you got your job done? And
You knew what was going on.
okay,
Because the orders came out that 15 planes were going out, we'll say at 2 o'clock in the morning.
right,
There was another 10 or 12 going out at 4 o'clock. And then when these started to return, the ones that were able to go back, you started loading them again.
so was
That went on for 2 days.
that was unusual then? You would say that? You
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They only flew regularly they don't fly once a day.
Mm-hmm.
But these, when that went on, that was just over and over and over. If the pilots could stand it, they went out. They had relief pilots, but they were only like co-pilots, what you
Sure.
call them. They were 90-day shave tails,
Mm-hmm.
what we call them, second lieutenants. And they were trained to fly, but they were not the lead personnel on the plane.
Sure.
They were secondary. But in a case of emergency like that, then they were using them, but they were really briefed as to what. There was always one or two planes that was the lead plane, and they had to follow orders from that one, from those two.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's very secretive.
Was it? Mm-hmm.
Loose lips sink ships, right?
That's right.
That's what the phrase was.
Right.
You didn't
Yeah,
tell
because
somebody
if
you
you tell
just met.
somebody, then you don't know who you're talking to, and
Sure.
somebody else gets it.
Now, Grandpa and Clarice, even Uncle Ron, was there any point that you might have been worried that we weren't going to win the war, or that things might not have been? Because obviously, in the end, the United States really was the reason that we won the war and all
That's
that
right.
stuff. Early on, were you worried that it might have been a very difficult task?
Well, I worried to the point that I worried for the service people, the guys that were
Mhm.
there, but I figured we would win.
Mm-hmm.
I had confidence that we would win.
Yeah. The only thing is, it was the fact that everybody knew what Hitler was.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the big thing to conquer that guy. Because he
Yeah.
was the meanest man in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what he did to people, you wouldn't believe.
Sure.
Did the people know that the United States, or was the United States a superpower like we know it to be today?
Oh, yeah.
Did
Yeah,
people know
oh,
that
yeah,
then?
I think they had a lot of trust in their country compared to what you have now.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people don't have faith anymore in what's going on, and that's the sad part about it.
But what role did the atomic bomb play in whether or not we were a superpower or not?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I mean, did you have confidence before or once
No, I
after?
had confidence in our people.
Sure.
I did, and we went to church all the time. We prayed, so we had confidence in our prayers and stuff. I mean, I'm not a saint or anything, don't get me wrong, but we did pray.
We had a lot of confidence in our Air Force and our ground crew.
Sure.
Our ground crew was really forceful.
Mhm.
Because when they landed in Normandy, they
Right.
were ready to wipe the surface off.
Mm-hmm.
And they did wipe it off with our help, because we put a lot of ammunition in that place.
Right. Now you loaded bombs onto these planes. At that time, were there a lot of planes where you were at where they were loading paratroopers who would also be landing in Normandy
No.
on that day? Okay, so
That
those.
was a separate division.
Okay, separate division.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Grandpa, you had mentioned that you had agreed with Uncle Ron that Hitler was just a bad guy. Did newspapers portray Adolf Hitler to be, as Uncle Ron said, a real bad guy? Do you remember reading anything or the newspaper reports? Because I can look back at history now and I can say, Adolf Hitler was a bad guy. We know that for sure now. Were American citizens aware of what was really happening?
They were aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were
Because
aware.
the clips that come back
Mm-hmm.
that people seen in the newspaper, there was no clips of pictures, but I mean the clips come back on the newspapers that what kind of a torture man he was.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Because-
And actually, I think too, in the Japanese side,
oh, they were
they
worse.
were really worse even than in,
They were horrible. When they down in the islands, they were. Nobody knew where they were, and
So, I thought of this earlier. You had mentioned that your cousin had came back under 100 pounds, and that was when he was in German care. If he would have been in Japanese care, they probably would have killed him.
oh yeah,
There
he
is no
would.
question
He
about it.
probably wouldn't have come back.
Which is interesting that both enemies, and one enemy is nicer to us than the other one. The
Yeah.
Germans treated Americans better than the Japanese did. That is
Right.
for sure. Coming up to close to the end of the war, do you have recollection of when President Roosevelt died? And was that kind of a big deal for the United States?
Oh,
when he-
yeah, that was a big deal. That's, yeah, wasn't too much before the war ended, really,
Right. Mm-hmm.
that he had died. And then Truman, of course, took over after that.
Sure. And did you remember having the same confidence in Harry Truman that you would have in President Roosevelt? Because he was only the vice president for
I
about
know
3
he-
months.
Yeah, I know
before
he
took-
was.
Mm.
Yeah, that I said, with him, I really didn't know him like I knew
Right.
Roosevelt.
Mhm.
Well, you had 16 years of Roosevelt.
Yes.
12 years.
Well,
he,
oh,
he
12,
died
pardon me.
before
Yeah,
he
he was
finished
gonna,
the
yeah,
fourth.
Oh, okay.
Right.
They were gonna change it, yeah.
So now Harry Truman made a tough decision when he dropped the atomic weapon on Japan. Do you think Americans agreed with that at the time? Was that a tough decision, or were they just ready to end the war and that's exactly what?
Well, I think, really, well, we didn't know what was gonna happen until
Right.
it happened to begin
Sure.
with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we felt bad about all the people there, but if you think of too, all the people they could have killed, that was
Right.
just in one area, well, all that they were killing, like the Japanese had, where the war part where the Japanese were, had a lot more deaths than the ones in England.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it stopped those, in other words, it stopped them, it ended the war.
Sure.
Yeah,
And I
because
think on those principles, how long, you don't know how long that war would have lasted and how many people would have got killed, yeah, on both sides
Sure.
in that
the
period of time.
Japanese were, when they were out in the islands and that, they were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Unscrupulous, huh?
Huh?
Unscrupulous?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
They didn't think that nobody else would ever think of hardly.
Mhm.
You wouldn't even think of the stuff that they did.
and they put themselves out. I mean, their life didn't mean a thing to them. I mean, if they were, well, you hear now where some of these people, well, 9/11 for one, where these guys went with the airplane and they went through the building. Well, the Japanese were like that. They'd go in, they'd arm themselves with explosives, knowing that they were never going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Kamikaze.
Just to get into a group of men and have it blow up.
There was some of them that would take their airplane and dive it right into the ship or
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, I think in the long run, I think it killed a lot of people, innocent people. But then in the other hand, they were also killing
Sure.
people too that were innocent.
Yeah, they were killing a lot of innocent people, American people.
How would you describe it when it was announced the war was over?
Ooh, man, the streets were wild.
Were they?
Oh,
Yeah.
Better than the Super Bowl.
Oh, much better.
Yeah?
Oh,
You
yeah.
can take in town here, you can get, the furthest you can get on a bus would be down before you got to the North Bridge. You know, the Main Street Bridge there.
So you say people were just out in the streets,
Oh,
just
they were.
celebrating,
It
and
was
I
at
was-
6 o'clock at night
Yeah.
when they,
I was stationed in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at the time, because I was waiting for replacement, because when I came back from overseas in June, the war wasn't over with yet with Japan. So then I was scheduled to go back to school again
Mhm.
and go to B-29 school to load bombs and how they operated on the 29. Well, then the war was over, so I was still in Sioux Falls waiting for orders when the thing was over with. Well, we went to town for supper because I was classified as regular army then. I mean, I didn't have no permanent base army.
Mhm.
Anyway, I could go out after 6 o'clock, and I didn't need a pass. I could go anytime. But anyway, we were in town having a supper, and when they announced that, we were sitting at a table. The waitress come around, the boss come around, picked up all the paper, all the bills on the tables all over, and crumbled them all up. Meal was on him. The
Wow.
place was just went wild. Everybody, the streets were full. You couldn't drive a car down the street. Nowhere. And taverns were full. Everybody wandering around on the street, raising hell, and that went on for all night. Well, my buddy and I, we were walking around just watching what was going on. We'd stop and have beer once in a while, but walking around and watching everybody raising Cain, and we got stopped by the MPs, and they looked at us and they said, "Oh, you guys are in pretty good shape, huh?" And you been drinking? I said, "We had a couple beers." And well, he said, "You got a job." I remember he was staff sergeant or something. The MPs. He said, "You got a job." He put an armband on us, and he says, "Now," he says, "what I want you guys to do is go around all these streets like that in the alleys and everything, and pick up all the guys that are laying out there drunk and that, and pick them up and put them on the bus, send them back to the base." We did that all night.
And you found plenty of guys?
Huh?
Did you find plenty of guys?
Oh, there were some of them so drunk some of them come in with civilian clothes on the next day, and oh man, they called Riverly at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I think they had 4 guys that fell out for Riverly.
Or they were loading them up.
Wow.
But that was, yeah, that was a day. I mean, there no traffic on. The only place there was traffic is about 4 or 5 blocks from Main Street, all the way around, where the cars could move. Other than that, if they had a car on Main Street, forget it. They never got it out.
Well,
Because,
the buses couldn't even go by over the
no,
bridge.
I don't think the buses
Did
went
you
down
get
there either.
You guys went, didn't you? Didn't you?
I don't
By
remember.
Monument Square when they were throwing all the girls in those ponds there, those.
You're throwing women in the pond, or?
Yeah, they were putting
Oh,
them in the
yeah.
ponds. They were climbing the telephone post. You wouldn't believe what they
The
were.
guys were running around out there. I don't know where the heck they got them, but they had oil cans and they filled them with beer or whatever they could fill them with, and then they'd run around and stick them under the girls' skirts and squirt them.
Oh,
just
it
to
was
be-
rough.
Right.
It was rough.
It was a son of a gun.
Wow. I was actually not aware of that. And that was sometime in August 9th or
No,
something
no,
like that.
14th.
Was it the 14th?
14th,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm sure slowly but surely, you guys settled down from your massive party, and then came the decision to occupy Germany and Japan, which is leading to a next question. Do you, and maybe not in this area as much, but do you remember knowing any Japanese Americans or German Americans or anybody who had dated or sympathized with the enemy?
No.
Because the only reason I ask is you hear stories of women in New York who were sympathetic towards Germans, and they shaved their heads in the middle of the streets.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
see,
I,
during,
not around.
I didn't think
well,
so.
went down on 4 Mile Road.
Mhm.
It was a Danish beer garden afterwards, but that used to be the German beer garden, and they
Okay.
had to change the name on that here.
Okay,
Because we had quite a few Germans around here,
sure.
and they had a lot of relatives there, but we didn't hear of any bad incidents on
Sure.
them. But,
Mhm.
yeah, they had, they kind of watched out for the
Sure.
Germans
I
around here.
understand. That's good. I mean, I know that we don't have a lot of Japanese Americans or
No,
anything
I
in
don't
this
think,
area.
yeah, I don't even know.
No.
We had restaurants, I think.
We had a couple of Japanese restaurants in town, and
But that was about it, and they were,
Chinese, and
Yeah.
a couple of German ones. There was.
well, German, we had a lot of
Yeah.
German ones, because there's a lot of Germans in Racine,
Sure.
you know, and they had that. But they kind of watched out, they were alert, trying to be alert to if they would hear anything, anybody'd hear anything about,
hmm
if they start talking about their German country and all this and that, if it was negative.
Sure.
You could talk about your country that you came from, but you don't want to hear it negative.
Sure.
You know, so. But it was kind of funny though that they had to change the name from the German beer garden to the Danish. That's how come it got the Danish beer garden, you know.
Right,
That,
right.
that was
I
during
thought it
the war.
was because a Dane owned it. What was that
It
guy's
was,
name?
well,
Norval?
yeah, he was a Dane that owned it afterwards, but it It was changed because of the German, because of the war.
Mhm.
They had to have it changed.
Yeah, he bought
Because
it.
they were
as-
afraid of different groups, like you say, would meet in that place
Sure.
and hold different meetings of some
There were
kind.
different nationalities and stuff in there
Hmm?
that they would get into a,
No, but I mean, they were more afraid of the group of people that would really get into the
Yeah.
place,
Sure.
so. Yeah,
Wow. Well, honestly, I don't really have too many questions more for you. So.
Well, the one thing too, did you talk about the rationing during the war?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
something I want to ask you guys about. Thank you very much. Ma'am.
oh, yes.
That was
You
important.
you had mentioned that when we were sitting down there, you couldn't just buy gas anytime you wanted to. How did they determine what you couldn't have and what you couldn't have?
Stamps.
They had, well, what they used overseas or used for the war, you knew you weren't gonna be getting, you couldn't get that like you wanted to, that was gas for
it
one.
was all ration. They set up ration stations and,
And you got the little, I just had one, I don't remember where I put them, remember I just had some for gas? I just showed them that.
yeah, you got coupons for
You have some?
gas, you got
Uh-huh.
coupons for cigarettes, you got coupons for meat, you got sugar.
Tires?
Hmm?
Tires? You
Tires,
Oh, he
oh.
had, ask him
Yeah,
about
I
tires.
got,
Tires.
couldn't buy tires anytime you wanted to. The rubber went for the war.
I had a car and I had just put brand new tires on it.
I'm gonna see once if I got that.
And anyhow, any surplus tires that you didn't have in your car, you had to turn them in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had 4 of them, and I had to turn them in.
Oh, they took them off your car?
No, I had
Extras.
bought new tires and put on my car.
Oh,
So the old tires I kept. I don't know why, but anyhow.
I don't know if
How
I can
much
find
was
it, if I
that?
can't,
Sure.
you know. I'll
What
show
was
you.
it? The dollar I got back?
No, I'm gonna show you.
Or was it no
I
40
think.
cents?
So okay, so you said meat and sugar and tires and was there anything else that you couldn't just up and buy it, right?
No, like nylons for women. That was out of the question.
Yeah.
They wanted nylons. They had to stand in line.
So
why? Was that considered a luxury?
Well, they were using nylon for
Parachutes
For
and
parachutes.
parachutes and
Oh.
stuff.
Yeah.
And some of your different wear some of the different, well, I call it organization or group of men that, or whatever they were doing, some of it, they used special clothing.
mm-hmm.
So the nylons and nylon was an outward, women couldn't get nylons.
So
When
what,
they did, they had to stand in line and wait for them.
what happened? I heard a story about when, like, someone was going to get married during the time of the wartime, and wasn't it something about neighbors would chip in or
Well,
did
yeah,
something
that's-
so that they could get
Well,
all
even
the
when we
stuff?
got married, you couldn't get sugar or anything like that. Everything was rationed. So what your aunt had to do was go by her sisters and get all the sugar stamps. See, everybody was allowed a certain amount. Whether it was kids or were allowed certain amounts and adults. Well, they all got stamps. So if they didn't use them, they had a surplus of them. So she went by all these ones to get what stamps they had to bring to the bakery so that they could get the sugar to make the cake.
Oh wow.
And didn't Aunt Claire say one time that the neighbors on English Street gave John and Edna their meat coupon so you could have meat at your reception?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then you couldn't, the only thing that you could really get without a coupon was turkey or
Okay.
fowl.
Hmm.
You had,
Wow.
That's his tires.
Oh my gosh.
He got 40 cents.
hmm,
You got 40 cents for
Yeah.
4 tires.
idle tires, it says. You need to make a copy of that.
Maybe we need to make a copy of
I
that.
made money on them tires.
Man, I thought that they wanted your new ones.
No, they didn't take the new ones. They had
Well, that's
any,
what I thought too. at
any
first.
surplus you had.
Now, when I teach my students, from what I understand, we paid for the war in a couple of different ways. Taxes, of course, as well as war bonds or
Right.
savings bonds. Did you buy any war bonds at the
Oh,
time?
yeah.
Did you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we had, $2,000 in war bonds.
Oh, yeah.
Did you really?
They had it arranged so that you could have a certain amount deducted out of your check for a war bond.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that, wasn't
Of
there?
course, I didn't have any because I
How
wasn't
about
serviced.
that?
I know it.
Would you believe it?
But I remember in grade school, we would take money and get a savings bond, and you'd have to fill a book.
Mhm.
In
Yeah,
grade
you
school,
had-
my
yeah.
mom would send us with money,
They had little,
Yep.
And some,
mhm.
and then once you filled that book,
40
then you got a
cents.
savings bond.
No, you wouldn't believe that if you wouldn't have seen it, I bet you.
Mm-mm.
10 cents, it
A
was 4
tire.
tires, right?
Yeah.
Or 10 cents a tire.
That's amazing. That is.
They'll never balance their books.
Oh, you never
oh,
cashed it?
yeah.
You never
Still
It's
looking
all
for
our
40
fault,
cents.
right? It's all our fault.
So you
that
never
they can't-
cashed it in, huh?
Nope.
Take it to a bank, see what they say.
See if they'll give us interest on it.
You could probably, you could probably
man.
make more money selling it as a piece of memorabilia.
Yeah,
than-
don't ever sell
than-
that.
yeah.
Please
Yeah.
don't ever sell
Oh, you know
that.
what? I wonder if you took it to the bank, how much interest you'd get on that.
March 4th, 1943.
Yeah.
That's
No,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's,
that's what I said. I kept it.
So
I mean,
anything you did,
Mhm.
everything was rationed. I mean, they had ration tickets and, I mean, your meat, your sugar, everything was rationed. Cigarettes were rationed.
you heard what happened about our wedding, right?
Yeah, I think I was kind of getting to it with Uncle Ron and asked how they paid,
What's that?
got all that stuff.
Well, for one thing, we couldn't get any beef and we couldn't get any pork or any of that stuff. So Mother went out and got all turkeys. And we only had 250 for dinner
Mhm.
in our home.
Wow.
But anyhow, she had to get the turkey and she made the dress and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's okay, because she couldn't get any beef or pork or any of that kind of stuff. You couldn't buy that. And then, because you had to have stamps to do it with. So when we had my wedding cake, when I went to get the wedding cake made, I had to go to all my sisters and get the sugar stamps that they had and bring it to the bakery so they would bake my wedding cake.
Wow.
And I had to
That
go
is
because they needed stamps, and of
That
course they
is
all
something.
had kids, and you got so much if your kids were a year old or whatever they were. You got so many.
See, I didn't realize that. I just thought it was each household.
No,
No,
no, no. For each one of the kids, well, like I said, all my sisters had quite a few kids,
Mhm.
and they were all small at that time. So that's what I had to bring to the bakery before they'd even consider baking my cake.
So,
And your gas, at that time, you had to have a stamp to get gas.
gasoline.
You couldn't go to the station and buy
Now,
gas.
and how would you get the stamps? Would they send them to you? in
They
the
had
mail?
an office that
Did
was
you?
issuing all this stuff out. Well, when I came home the first time on furlough, I wasn't sure I had a car, but I wouldn't know if I wasn't home to get stamps or get gas. But anyway, on the train coming home, that was a 3-day trip from the West Coast. But anyway, run into a woman that was sitting on the train and, I don't know, talk to everybody. And she was some executive out of some business somewhere. And she had access to the gas stamps. And got talking about, she said, "Where are you going?" I told her we're going home on furlough and how many days I had. And I said, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive my car even because I wasn't home to get gas stamps." And she didn't say anything right away. And we went down to the mess car. We got something to eat. And she said, on the way down, she says, "You come with me," she says. And she says, when we got up there, you had to pay for it. She said, take his lunch out of my check. Well, that was fine. I thanked her for it and sat with her and ate dinner and got done. And I think she had about an hour or so to ride yet, wherever she was going to get off. And she opened up her purse and she handed me a whole stack of coupons for gas. She said, Here, she said, enjoy yourself while you're home.
Mm.
She said, you might not never get home again.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were generous people who were there. But we even had it for silk stockings. You had to stand in line on that for.
Now, is that when the black market started? Because
Oh.
people would black market that stuff?
I don't know when it started, but at that time, I don't know. But that's-
Some of it did, I think some of it did.
It probably.
How they got around and getting stuff to run on black market, I don't know. But
Yeah, well, see, now, like with red meat, once in a while, like hamburger or something like that, if you found out a meat market got in their shipment of beef or whatever they had, they would be lined out outside of the butcher shop to get whatever coupons you had to
Right.
get that with. Didn't make any difference, but they were, if it cold or not, they just stood all way down the street.
Now, how long did that last? You said it was August 14th. Was it even a little bit after that you still,
Oh, yeah.
still
Oh,
rationing
yes,
goods?
yeah, that was, see, we got married on the 17th
Sure.
of November.
that,
So it was still on at that time. It was on after we were married a while.
yeah, it was on for about a year after the war.
Yeah, it gradually had started
Because
to.
even
get-
after the war, you couldn't buy any appliances.
Oh, no.
No refrigerators, no stoves, or no automobiles.
Mhm.
Hmm.
There was nothing
And
that you could
that was all
buy.
making sense to me because after I teach World War II, I'll teach the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when there was a boom of, I want this, we need a
Oh, yeah.
refrigerator, let's take a
Car.
car.
And that's
and,
when, that's when some of your people got greedy.
Right.
You take, like your shops, that's why we got the problem we got today. They let married women work in these defense plants during the war, but some of them didn't stick to their requirements that any woman that had a man's job was out of a job. They didn't go for that. If she was a good production person, they kept her.
Instead of
That's
giving
why
the
we
guys
got-
their jobs back.
Sure.
That's why we got some of the problems we got today.
Well, and then it went to the point they got used to making that money, so they won, so now that everybody has to have two jobs now,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't make it go without it.
That's right.
You know, that's the problem, and otherwise, I mean, I worked a little bit after the war, different, I worked at the Danish Beer Garden, a few places, but I was most generally home, and of course, Ruth never worked out because she had too many kids and didn't anyhow. But, I said that it was a fact that those people that stayed, the women that stayed, they could buy, they could pay the price for stuff, so that's when everything started to go high up.
Mm-hmm.
See, and during the war, your houses, there was a freeze on houses. When you bought your house, you got your house a lot cheaper
Oh, yeah.
than you did. Well, when he got out of service, we had to go sky high for the little old house we
The
had.
houses doubled in price.
Yes, because after the war, right away they stopped that freeze. Well, then all these service people that came home,
Mm-hmm.
if you were buying a house,
You got it stuck in your butt.
you know, what probably would have been maybe $2,500 or $1,000, you got probably, it would be 50 when you got
Right.
it.
Grandpa, what year did you buy the house on Alice Avenue?
What did you say?
What year did you buy the house on Alice Avenue? What year was that?
Oh, it would be the end of 49.
And if you don't mind me asking, how much was it? How much was that house?
5,000. We
Five.
sold the house on Albert Street for 5,000, and we bought this one on Alice for 5,000.
Wow.
But we did a lot of repairs, a lot of adding on through the years.
Yeah.
With Uncle Ron's help.
Yeah.
And
Before the war, in 1941, I could have bought a brand new car, a deluxe, what they called a deluxe Chevrolet, two-door. How much you think? $765.
I was gonna say about $800 maybe.
For 1 month's payment.
Mhm.
Probably, you know,
Right.
yeah.
I could have bought a brand new car. If I'd have been working where I had a decent job that I could have paid for it, I could have bought a brand new one.
But was that hard back then?
Huh?
Was it hard to pay $700 back then?
Oh, Shit,
Like
you
it, like it
40
would.
cents
you
an
weren't
hour.
even making
yeah.
a buck an hour.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
That's right.
When
If
I
you
came
compare it, yeah.
and worked on the railroad out here, I got 44 cents an hour. And then when I transferred from there over to Hamilton Beach, a yard man, I got 60 cents an hour. 40 hours a week.
Well, I was a short order cook in a small restaurant. I got 19 cents an hour.
Plus tips.
Short order, huh?
Plus tips.
No, I
The
was
cook
in the
probably
kitchen.
didn't.
I was in the kitchen
You
doing
didn't
the work.
share you didn't share the tips with
I
waitresses?
didn't get any chips.
Wow.
Well, some-
They
you
do
know
it
how
differently
some-
now, I think.
Sometimes
you
the
know what?
waitresses split it with people.
Oh yeah, I was just telling, we were talking about Danish Beer Garden when I worked there. Chris is the one that I'm trying to think of his name.
Oh, Chris
Chris,
Norholm.
yeah. But anyhow, there had one maid was a salad maker and one made the meat, did all the meat. And I was a salad maker. One was a waitress. I was a salad maker. Had to dish out all the ice cream and all that kind of stuff, do everything like that. But anyhow, they had 100 people there. So I had to do it for 100 people. I had to dish out all the ice cream, make all the salads and do all that. And the woman waited on those people, which was fine, and the one did the cooking. They each got a tip and I got nothing. And here they are, wiggling that tip in front of me. If you don't think I was mad. Not that
Was it $1 or was it a penny or?
No, it was pretty good money that they got.
Right.
You should.
They could have shared it. Well, anyhow, I went up to Chris and I says, I quit.
Oh,
He says, what are you gonna quit for? I says, because it's not that I want the money, but I don't like them rubbing it in.
Mhm.
When they had to rub it into me, that,
When they got a tip and she didn't get any.
and I did more work actually than what either one of them did.
well, heck yeah, 'cause you made the meal.
Now that I think about it, when I worked at Durango's doing dishes and clearing tables, I don't think we got, maybe if the waitress was nice, she might have given us,
Yeah,
you know,
busboy.
talk after the whole night
Yeah.
while she made,
But,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's what I said, but then Chris, and I don't know if you know it, but anyhow, Chris says to me, don't worry about tips. So at the end of the week, when I got my pay, he gave me $5 because I wasn't getting tips and the other ones were.
oh,
So I got
So
$5
then you
in.
stayed?
I stayed for a while and then
But would he have done that had you not mentioned anything?
I don't think so.
See, it was worth that $5 to keep you happy.
Yeah, but it just made me
Well, of
mad. I
course
didn't
it did.
mind
Yeah, I
that they
can
got
see
the
your
money.
point.
Yeah, but to sit there and wag it in
Well,
front of me.
isn't it about the same today? The waitresses get the tips, but the guy who cleans off the tables all back and forth,
Yeah,
he don't get nothing.
only
I
if the
don't-
waitress
I
would like
think
to give
that's
her the
right.
tips.
I think some of them have changed now, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
kind of split it,
Most of the good waitresses now will tip the busboy
yeah.
a little bit.
Divided.
There's a lot of them that they put all their money in a basket and then it's divided
Well,
out.
that's, to one extent, I don't really believe in that
I don't
completely
either.
because there are good waitresses and there are some that are not.
Yeah,
And they don't deserve it where the other ones do.
So, what I think we're gonna do with this, if you don't mind, is we'll probably run down to Walgreens, put it on
That's
their
fine.
scanner, and then bring that right back.
Scan both sides.
Yeah, I know, I see that.
But isn't that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Well, a friend of
Yeah.
mine, her daughter is a waitress at Famous Dave's on the weekends. Well, last weekend, Michelle was working, and she waited on this table, lots of, whatever, and the man left a tip, in the, how they have that
Yeah.
book,
yeah.
left a tip, and we're leaving the restaurant. The son that was with him went back to the table, took that money out of that book, shoved it in his pocket, and walked away.
Oh, yeah.
So Michelle opened it and didn't have a tip, so she thought, well, make her mad, but what are you gonna do about it? The next table called her over and said his son took that money.
Hmm.
That happens. I seen that in Durango on High Street one time, where the father throwed down the tip money, and the son, about that high, was found behind, and he just reached right over and took the money and off the table and put it in his pocket. I
Yeah.
seen it with my own eyes.
Well, that's it, there's a lot of people in the world, different,
yeah.
But nowadays you don't know you should say anything.
yeah. Well, like
Oh,
I
I
said,
Well,
I didn't.
Tim, when you were in service, you were drafted, right?
Yes.
Where did you go for training?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Oh, that's
was
where
the
you got
basic-
spinal.
That's where I got spinal meningitis, yes. And then I went out to Fort Devens, Massachusetts for my Morse code training out there. And I found out later that Uncle Walt was stationed there for a while.
Oh, yeah, I know, because he used to come and visit Ruth and Bill all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then once in a while I go to the show with them.
Yeah,
Only Bill and I, we used to go to the show quite often.
yeah, and drive
We go to
cars
show, but
without,
somebody always caught us.
Yeah,
without a license.
but they caught you and Ed Marge was
Oh,
worse,
yeah,
not me so
that's
much.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but this was when I used to go with you to the show. Because your mother, she didn't feel like when she was pregnant, she didn't want to sit in the show like that, and they had 2 movies and everything else. So then, he was in service, I would go with him sometimes. Well, anyhow, Uncle Bill Bislow, he's one of these that's very technical about things, and one of the girls that I knew when I was in school, then she was married, and she would go out at night, but she wasn't doing anything wrong. She just was going out. I mean, you can't sit home every night of the week. While somebody's in service, you can't, you'd
Sure.
have a nervous breakdown. So anyhow, he kept on telling her the wrong that she was doing by going, her husband was in service and here she's going out. He doesn't even know what she's doing, but going out. And she got so mad one day, and she says, well, your sister is no better than that. She says, she's going out with a married man with kids. She knew it was him. And then he got on my case. Why was I running around with a married man with kids? Well, actually, I said, well, that happens to be Bill Vanderhoef. I says, and Ruth can't go and I'm going with him. But that's what, people, they misunderstand
Can't mind
things.
your own business, you know?
Sure.
And that was not Bill's business in the first place.
No, I know.
Bill's business.
Wasn't he the one who was counting how many cookies were eaten in a day?
Yeah. Oh, not in a day, just once. Yeah, well, he did it, but I mean, I got caught once
Yeah.
taking a cookie.
Then she babysat all day long.
I
there.
babysat all day long, and when my sister came home, Evelyn came home, she went in the pantry, she looked at the cookie jar, and she says, you took a cookie. She says, I didn't tell you you could have any.
I quit.
That's what she did.
I wished I could have quit. But I had taken one cookie out of the cookie jar all night, and was practically working for nothing.
Can I point you in a different direction? I think we're probably getting
Oh, I'm done. I'm
concluded
good.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a pointed question here.
Oh,
And we talked about the war.
Mhm.
And my question was going to be, how do you answer the patriotism that you felt during the war versus how Americans act now? And I know we're still patriotic, pretty much, after 9/11.
There's
but,
no comparison.
well, my point is, how would Americans today react to the rationing that you had to do with everything else? You couldn't have it. You had to do it for the war effort. How would you answer
They
how
wouldn't.
Americans can do it today?
They wouldn't do it.
I don't think they'd make it.
Could they
Even
give
if
up
they
their cell
tried.
phones? Could they give up?
They have been used to
Cars.
having so many things that to give it up, I don't think that they would. You may have some that will do it.
I think
but
there'd be
not-
riot in the streets.
I think so.
Well, and another thing too, I think that eventually you'd have people committing suicide because they couldn't have what they wanted.
that
These
could
people
be.
are so used to having just about everything they want. I mean, you kids come from a family, and our kids, where you didn't have everything handed to you on a gold platter.
And we had to wait
You
for
had
it.
you had to wait, and you had to work for what you wanted when you were old enough to do it.
Right.
These kids, a lot of them don't have to do that.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, when you kids were growing up and we were growing up with yous, we didn't have this, like your Uncle Al says, plastic. What he meant is credit cards. There wasn't such a thing as all these credit cards that were out.
Do it, Danny.
Today, these kids got these credit cards, they got them maxed out to the hilt. And that's why there's so much of this, people losing their homes, because they're maxed out debt-wise with their boats, their cars, and their house. they can't make any payments.
Well, if we could buy a car for $700, that would be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
That's
But you know that same damn car after the war was worth $2,000?
You know, we had, like,
Used.
like I said, we had to wait for cars or for getting your stove and stuff like that. Now, Mother and Dad bought, each one of us, when we got married, we all got a stove from Mom and Dad. But we had to wait to get our stove because we had to be on a list.
So you couldn't cook?
The freezer, I cooked, I had the Nesco.
So why was that? Because all the factories were turned over to the war effort?
Yes,
So they
right.
weren't
Yeah.
producing
Yeah.
to make an overstock.
No, they had to revert back. Well, that took time and then they couldn't get the steel.
And refrigerators, we had our name on the list. When we first got married for a refrigerator, we moved into the house on Ellis Avenue. There was a refrigerator in there, and it was a couple months after we moved in there that our name first came out. That was over a year that it first came out. And then his mother and Dad bought the refrigerator. But you still, at that time, still had to be on the list.
You know, we belonged to Northside Bank. And we needed a refrigerator because we had an old ice box. And we wanted a refrigerator. And I says, I gotta borrow $100. Oh, okay. And when I got the money, it was only $90. And I said, well, what's going on? Well, they said, you gotta pay the interest. Well, why didn't you say so? Why didn't you say $110? I'll never forget that one.
Oh, yeah.
They took
Well-
the interest right off the top.
Well, you know,
I
I
went
went
ahead
in,
for home.
well, I belong to the credit union in town here,
You make it?
educators.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, I went in at the Northside Bank, it wasn't the name the Northside at that time. But I thought I needed $300 and I wanted it right now, and I didn't want to take it out of savings or nothing in there. So I says, well, I'll borrow it for a month or two, borrow
Because
$300.
years ago you could do that.
So what I did is I went in there and she says, no, you can't have it. And I says, well, why not? I says, my credit is good, isn't it? And she says, oh, your credit is excellent. I says, well, then why can't I have it? She says, you gotta borrow either $1,000 or nothing. I said,
Oh,
goodbye.
gosh.
I went over to the credit union over here then. Then I joined there. And I could do it because I was working for the school at that time. So. But I mean, that I would have to borrow $1,000 when I only wanted $300.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was never, you should have heard some, I don't swear, but you should have heard, I would have sworn if I did.
If she knew any words, she'd have used them.
She had thoughts anyhow.
No.
Yeah, like Ma said.